Chapter 5633. In the beginning, Lin Yi used some means to control Dafeng. To be honest, at that time, Dafeng was not willing to be controlled by Lin Yi. Later, because of the benefits, Dafeng continued to follow Lin Yi. Now, Dafeng was already convinced by Lin Yi and was willing to work for Lin Yi. Only Dafeng himself knew the process of this. Lin Yi looked at the corpses on the ground and casually shot out a few alchemic fires to completely destroy the corpses. Then he said to Dafeng, "I killed these people. If you can, leave the base temporarily and find an excuse to explain later, so as not to be suspected by the center." "Boss Lin Yi, don't worry. I know what to do," Dafeng replied with a smile. He was a little touched in his heart. From these small details, it could be seen that Lin Yi really cared about Dafeng. It was right to follow such a boss. Yu Yi stuck his head out of the door and looked around. He immediately shrank back. Dafeng asked in a low voice, "Boss Lin Yi, is the guy you brought reliable?" If it was someone else, Dafeng might not have asked. What was there to doubt about the people who followed Lin Yi? However, Yu Yi's sneaky appearance made Dafeng feel that he was not reliable. This question also made Lin Yi a little puzzled. Yu Yi's life and death were controlled by Lin Yi. He should be an absolutely reliable person. But Lin Yi felt that Yu Yi's brain circuit was a little different. It was possible that his nerves were connected wrongly. "Hey, kid, what are you talking about? Are you trying to sow discord between me and Master? You idiot, Dafeng, don't think that I can't recognize you just because I changed my appearance." Yu Yi stuck his head out of the door and pretended to be fierce. "What the hell?" Dafeng was inexplicable. "Who knows you? Have I seen you before?" Lin Yi rubbed his forehead and said, "Dafeng, you don't have to care about him. This fellow is still very reliable." Yu Yi immediately had a complacent look on his face. He glanced at Dafeng provocatively, but in his heart he thought, "Of course I'm reliable. Once I escape from your control, I'll definitely kill you." "That's right. How's the condition of that blue flood dragon?" In Lin Yi's spiritual sense, the blue flood dragon's body was filled with all sorts of wires and test tubes. There were so many of them that he could not count them all at once. It was enough to drive someone with trypophobia crazy. Hence, to be safe, he had to ask Dafeng. Dafeng frowned slightly and said, "Boss Lin, I'm not too sure about this, but I heard someone say that this blue flood dragon strength was forcibly raised to the profound ascending stage. Because it was an experimental drug, the situation is very unstable. Now it's relying on instruments and nutrient drinks to survive. If the wires and test tubes are removed, it's very likely that it will die immediately. We can't remove it." Lin Yi looked like he had a headache. This was quite troublesome. If he brought back a dead blue flood dragon, the sea beasts might riot immediately. Yu Yi simply walked in and said indifferently, "Master, since he said that we can't remove it, then let's directly take it back. As long as the blue flood dragon doesn't die when we return it to the sea beasts, it's none of our business." Needless to say, Yu Yi was a shameless guy. This shameless idea was very meaningful. After Lin Yi thought about it, he nodded and said, "That's the only way." With Lin Yi's universal qi, he could actually try to save the blue flood dragon. However, Lin Yi wasn't sure if he could treat the sea beasts. Moreover, the sea beasts had been modified by the center. It was hard to say if it would be effective. Therefore, before he could be sure that the blue flood dragon could be saved, Lin Yi didn't dare to act rashly. If he killed the blue flood dragon, then the ancient underworld would be finished. There's no time to lose. Yu Yi, come with me immediately. Dafeng, quickly follow your plan and arrange things to get rid of suspicion. I guess the glasses doctor will be back soon. Lin Yi didn't want to face the glasses doctor at this time. First, it was because of the blue flood dragon. Second, it was because the other party had a flying saucer. If the glasses doctor noticed that Lin Yi was in the base, he would directly fire a few laser cannons at high altitude or remotely detonate the base. Then it would be a big problem. Dafeng originally wanted to go and help, but Yu Yi chased him away with a look of disdain. In Yu Yi's words, "You're just a foundation establishment perfection weakling. Don't be a hindrance, and you'll be a great help." Lin Yi and Yu were extremely fast. In just a few breaths, they arrived at the laboratory where the blue flood dragon was imprisoned. They saw a huge cylindrical glass jar filled with a light green liquid. A blue flood dragon floated inside, and its body was full of various wires and test tubes. Lin Yi observed for a while. If they wanted to take this cylindrical glass jar away, the instruments on the side couldn't be left behind. This seemed to be a bit big. Moreover, he didn't know if the flying spirit beast could bear this weight. Yu Yi approached the glass jar and stared at the blue flood dragon inside. Then he knocked on the glass with his finger and said, "Hey, you're not dead yet, right? We're here to save you. If you're not dead, then squeak. Otherwise, we'll just collect your corpse." The blue flood dragon in the glass jar suddenly opened its eyes and looked at Yu Yi angrily. Obviously, it was very unhappy with Yu Yi's words. Lin Yi thought to himself, as expected of the royal family, this temper is definitely not small. After pushing Yu Yi away, Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "I was entrusted by the clown sea serpent to rescue you. However, it's not easy to deal with you in your current state. What do you think of your own condition?" The blue flood dragon struggled and twisted its body a few times. It opened its mouth and said in the water, "I don't know either. It seems like there's a very powerful force in my body, but I feel very weak. Human, if you can save me, I, Lenguza, will be your brother." Yu Yi curled his lips and said softly, "Is it that rare? Having a sea beast as a brother wasn't necessarily something to be proud of. However, it's quite impressive to speak in the water." Lin Yi turned his head and glared at Yu Yi. Only then did Yu Yi shut his mouth resentfully. Of course, he was cursing Lin Yi in his heart. "Lenguza, I'm not sure if you can leave this glass jar now, so I can only move it back with the things here. Don't move around. We'll figure out how to save you when we get back." Lin Yi tried his best to speak in a soothing tone. As expected, it calmed Lenguza's emotions very well. Chapter 5634. As for Yu Yi, Lenguza directly ignored him. As a sea beast, he was actually very perceptive and knew who was in charge here. Lin Yi nodded, and with a flip of his hands, he condensed 2 super pill fire bombs. This time, Lin Yi added his own spiritual sense into them, and the ratio was relatively high, which made it easier to control the direction of the explosion. Not waiting for Yu Yi and Lenguza to react, Lin Yi had already thrown out the super pill fire bombs. The 2 bombs pulled away from each other, slanted upwards, and exploded outwards. With a loud bang, a huge hole ran through the entire superstructure of the base. But the broken parts didn't fall down, it was completely torn apart by the explosion. Yu Yi was a little dumbfounded. Lin Yi's strength really refreshed his impression of him again and again. Between killing Lin Yi immediately and improving his strength to kill Lin Yi, Yu Yi once again firmly chose the latter. Of course, this determination would only last until the next opportunity to immediately kill Lin Yi appeared. Lin Yi turned around and made a hole in the ground with the glass jar as the center, then directly lifted this piece of ground with his true chi. After testing it, he felt that the weight was okay, so he turned to Yu Yi and helped him put the instruments on it. Yu Yi hurriedly moved the surrounding connected instruments to this piece of ground and scattered them so that Lin Yi could maintain his balance. However, in his heart, he was thinking that Lin Yi was a little bastard. He didn't know whether he came to save the sea beast or to destroy other people's houses. Lin Yi waited for Yu Yi to pack up, then transformed into his soul state. But with both hands holding the entire piece of ground, he flew out of the hole. Yu Yi couldn't fly, so he could only directly jump on it, and then call the 2 flying spirit beasts. The 2 of them landed on their own flying spiritual beasts and quickly flew towards ruined town. As Lin Yi was still in his soul form, he carried the entire weight of the ground on his body. As a result, the flying spiritual beast beneath him did not carry much weight and did not slow down at all. It wasn't that Lin Yi couldn't fly, but if he had to carry such a large piece of ground, it would be a bit strenuous for him to use his primordial spirit to fly. Half a day later, the two of them returned to Ruined Town. The various sects had already returned to their respective residences in an inn, and only the sea beasts led by the clown sea serpent were gathered together. "Prince Languza, are you all right?" When the clown sea serpent saw Languza in the glass jar, he immediately went forward and asked anxiously. Languza opened his eyes and nodded. "So it's Snake Shichiro. I heard that you asked this human to save me? Thank you so much." Snake Shichiro quickly smiled and said, "It's all part of my duty. Besides, we've been friends since we were young. I can't just watch you suffer. Let's skip the pleasantries. Hurry up and think of a way to get me out of this D***MN jar." Languza wiggled his body. It was obvious that he was annoyed by this glass jar. Snake Shichiro turned to look at Lin Yi and said, "Lin brothers, can't you get rid of these things?" Lin Yi smiled bitterly and said, "You don't know Languza's situation. That's why you're asking. What's going on?" Snake Shichiro was stunned and asked in confusion. Lin Yi pointed at Languza and said, "Can't you feel Languza's aura? He's already at the early stage of mysterious ascension." Snake Shichiro felt it for a moment, and then said with some envy, "He's really at the early stage of mysterious ascension. It's only been 2 days, and he has soared from the early stage of nascent soul to the early stage of mysterious ascension. This guy got a blessing in disguise." "It's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse," Lin Yi said lightly. "In order to use Languza's genes to make the fusion potion, the people in the center first used an unstable test potion to raise his strength to the early stage of mysterious ascension, and then extracted Languza's genes to use. If it was only the early stage of nascent soul Languza, it would not be able to make a potion to raise his strength to the early stage of mysterious ascension." Yes, that's what happened." Snake Shichiro nodded quickly, with an expression of understanding. He tilted his head and asked in confusion, "You can understand?" Snake Shichiro shook his head decisively and said, "I don't understand." "If you don't understand, why are you pretending to understand? You made me think that I'm so stupid that I'm not even comparable to a sea snake, and I almost started to doubt my life. What the hell?" Lin Yi was too lazy to pay attention to the indignant Yue and continued, "It doesn't matter if you don't understand. Simply put, the center created a potion that can raise one to the mysterious ascension stage, but humans will die if they use it, so they captured Languza and used his strong physique of the Sea Beast King to fuse this potion. Although it was not completely successful, they can already extract materials from Languza's body to make a more stable, more perfect, and more powerful potion, helping the human practitioners in the center to break through the mysterious ascension stage." This conclusion was made by Lin Yi based on some of Dafeng's words and his own inference. Although it could not be proved, Lin Yi believed that it should be very close to the truth. Shi Qilong came to a sudden realization and said, "I understand now that you put it this way. That's why Languza's condition is very unstable right now. Although that medicine increased his strength, it also destroyed Languza's body at the same time. The things on his body were used to preserve his life? Yes, you are very smart. If we remove those things, Languza is likely to die immediately. What do you think we should do?" Lin Yi brought Languza back is to leave this problem for Snake Shichiro to solve. Snake Shichiro immediately shook his head and said, "Then don't remove it. If Languza dies, I will be buried with him." "Snake Shichiro, are you still my brother?" Languza shouted, obviously very dissatisfied with Snake Shichiro's words. Snake Shichiro turned his head and advised patiently, "Languza, don't be agitated. I am also doing this for your own good. Look, when you are agitated, you are bleeding." "Bleeding? Damn, why are you bleeding?" Lin Yi was also shocked, quickly turned his head to look. Sure enough, the number of things that were inserted into Languza's body, the number of places that were inserted into the body began to bleed. If it was only 1 or 2 places, probably Snake Shichiro would not care. But such a large area of bleeding at the same time, the whole glass tank began to change color. The situation is definitely not optimistic. Lenguza, has this situation happened before? Lin Yi was shocked but not panicked, still maintained enough calm, and immediately grasped the key problem. No, this situation has never happened before. Lenguza's voice was a little panicked. After all, among the sea beasts he is only a teenager. Chapter 5635. What should I do? What should I do? Snake Shichiro was in a panic. He was no longer as calm as he was when he first met Lin Yi. After all, Lenguza had a good relationship with him, and he was also a member of the royal family. He could not be blamed for panicking out of concern. Lin Yi knew that he could not count on Snake Shichiro to make a decision now. If he allowed Lenguza to continue bleeding, this guy would probably die here. Although Lin Yi had saved Lenguza according to the agreement, and even if Lenguza died now, there was nothing he could do. But after all, he was in front of Lin Yi. If he did not take any measures, Lin Yi would feel guilty. Get out of the way. Lin Yi shouted and pushed Snake Shichiro and Yu Yi aside. Then he punched the glass jar. To Lin Yi's surprise, this punch, which contained a lot of genuine qi, did not shake the glass jar at all. It was obvious that the material was definitely not ordinary glass. With no time to think, Lin Yi punched again. This time his fist was wrapped in a layer of 5 elements, murderous qi. Finally, the glass jar was successfully broken. The liquid inside rushed out in an instant, tearing the broken hole. Lenguza also rushed out with the water. Lin Yi did not care about his wet clothes. He directly reached out to support Lenguza. He turned his hand and took out some healing elixirs. He crushed them for external application and smeared them on Lenguza's body. It was easier to take them for internal application. He just asked Lenguza to open his mouth and throw them in. Because he was not sure if it was effective, Lin Yi did not dare to pull out all the things at once. He just smeared healing elixirs on the fallen parts when he rushed out. Unfortunately, the effect was minimal. Although almost all of Lin Yi's elixirs were of the best quality, after the elixirs took effect, the wounds just showed signs of healing, but they split again as if there was an invisible force stopping the elixirs. Why is this happening? Why can't your pills even stop the bleeding? Snake Shichiro had been watching with hope as Lin Yi healed Lenguza, but now he was once again thrown into confusion. Lenguza twitched violently a few times, then suddenly burst into tears. After all, he was only a teenager. When he felt that death was about to befall him, he could no longer endure the heart-wrenching fear. Snake Shichiro, I don't want to die. Save me. Lenguza cried loudly, but it was obvious that there was an unconcealable weakness in his voice. Snake Shichiro had a bitter look on his face. He thought to himself, you don't want to die, but I don't want to die either. He had clearly saved her, but she had died right in front of him. Being buried with her was not something that could be casually said. Lin brothers, do you have any ideas? Hurry up and save him. Snake Shichiro was really anxious. Originally, saving Lenguza was definitely a great credit. It was not a big deal if he could not save him, and it would not affect him, Snake Shichiro. However, Lenguza had clearly been saved, but he died in front of Snake Shichiro in the end. This matter was a little unclear. There was no such thing as harmony among the oceanic beasts. The strong preyed on the weak, and looting a burning house was the fundamental rule. Although they had a good relationship, and although they were somewhat related, no one would believe it. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Lenguza's current situation was not very good. Elixirs were no longer of any use, and the only chance was Lin Yi's all-purpose vital energy. I can give it a try, but I can't guarantee the result. Lin Yi chose to help in the end. After all, Lenguza gave Lin Yi a good feeling, and Snake Shichiro could be considered to have helped Lin Yi a lot before. Snake Shichiro was immediately overjoyed. When Lin Yi said, that he could give it a try. He was like a drowning man who had grabbed onto his last life-saving straw. He quickly nodded and said, "Lin brothers, go ahead and try. No matter the result, I, Snake Shichiro, will remember the benefits you've given me. Lin brothers." When Languza heard that Lin E might have a way, he stopped crying and looked nervously at Lin E, not hiding the hope in his eyes. Lin E estimated that Languza would not be able to hold on for long, so he no longer hesitated and said to Snake Shichiro, "Then I will bring Languza to a quiet room to heal him. Snake Shichiro, you will guard me outside." Snake Shichiro wanted to say that he could heal Languza here, and no one would dare to disturb him. However, he resisted in the end. After all hope was now on Lin E, and Snake Shichiro did not dare to make Lin E unhappy. "Lin brothers, you'll have to work hard. Hurry up and find a quiet room." Snake Shichiro was also tactful. He immediately summoned a huge crab and asked it to carry Languza on its back. Then it followed behind Lin E to find a quiet room. There were many houses in ruined town, so there was no need to look for one. There were empty rooms on the side. Lin E just did not want others to see him healing Languza, so there was nothing to be picky about. After Lin E brought Languza into the empty room, Yu-E and Snake Shichiro guarded on both sides like two door gods. Whether it was sea beasts or humans, they were all driven far away. They even set up a layer of divine sense defense to block possible divine sense spying. The blood flow of Languza's wound slowed down a little, but it was not because his injury was getting better. On the contrary, this was the inevitable result of Languza's body losing too much blood. When the blood completely stopped flowing, it would be the time when Languza was completely finished. Lin E pressed his hand on Languza's thick body with a solemn expression, continuously transferring the all-purpose vital energy to him. However, the all-purpose vital energy, which had always been successful, could not heal Languza's wound this time. What is this thing? Why is it so stubbornly obstructing the recovery of the wound? Lin E frowned slightly. The all-purpose vital energy was effective, but there was a strange force hovering around all of Languza's wounds. Although the all-purpose vital energy could repair the wound, it would soon be destroyed by the strange force. Because the process of repairing the damage was too fast, there seemed to be no abnormality on the surface. It was as if Lin Yi's treatment did not work. Fortunately, after the all-purpose vital energy entered Languza's body, the consumption of the bleeding was offset by more than half. Languza did not continue to weaken, and he finally recovered a little bit of spirit. "Lin brothers, I, Languza, sincerely thank you for saving me." Languza raised his big head and said to Lin E gratefully, "I heard that you humans will recognize the person you respect as your boss and follow his orders. If you can save my life this time, I, Languza, am willing to recognize you as my boss." Chapter 5636. It did not seem to be a bad thing if he could have a sea beast royal as a younger brother. At least if he wanted the sea beast Sniden, he should not need to hunt them himself. He could just ask for some directly. Lin E was really a little tempted by Languza's sudden proposal, so Lin E could not let anything happen to Languza. After thinking carefully for a while, Lin E probed Languza's body with his divine sense. At the same time, he did not forget to warn Languza, "Don't resist my divine sense. Otherwise, both of us will be in trouble." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Languza agreed straightforwardly before withdrawing all of his soul into his primordial spirit. He entered a dormant state with his primordial spirit. "It's really thorough." Lin E smiled slightly. Languza could indeed completely avoid interfering with Lin Yi's actions by doing this, but in this way it was equivalent to entrusting his life to Lin E. If Lin E had any bad intentions, he could easily do something to Languza's body. However, Languza's trust was also a responsibility for Lin E, so Lin E once again increased the intensity of his divine sense in Languza's body to thoroughly explore Languza's physical condition. "It's more serious than I expected." Lin Yi sighed softly and frowned more deeply. Just now, Lin Yi's attention was attracted by the many wounds on the surface of Lenguza's body, so he did not notice that in Lenguza's body there were signs of collapse at the genetic level. If it were not for Lin Yi's super strong divine sense, he might not have been able to find these signs. If his guess was right, it should be the sequelae left by the potion that forcibly enhanced Lenguza's strength, and now it broke out. The omnipotent Qi could repair the symptoms of this collapse, but it could not stop the continued destruction of the strange force. If this strange force could not be eliminated, even with the endless Qi in the jade pendant space as a support, Lenguza would not be able to escape the fate of the physical collapse in the end. Lin Yi glanced at Lenguza, whose eyes were closed. He thought to himself that whether or not Lenguza would be able to live would really depend on his character. He hoped that his character was still passable as a beast. Lin Yi, who already had a plan in mind, carefully divided the divine sense that invaded Lenguza's body into an extremely subtle trace, and then directly transformed this trace of divine sense into the spiritual awareness pill fire, and brazenly rushed into the strange force that was wreaking havoc at the genetic level of Lenguza. Because the Qi had no effect on these strange forces, Lin Yi had no choice but to take a risk and use the spiritual awareness pill fire to try to attack these strange forces. Fortunately, Lenguza believed in Lin Yi and directly absorbed the power of his divine sense into his soul. There was no residue on his body, so Lin Yi's spiritual awareness pill fire would not accidentally hurt Lenguza's soul and divine sense. Lin Yi's face showed a dignified expression. Although it was only an extremely small trace of the spiritual awareness pill fire, he still needed to pay a great deal of attention to control it, lest the spiritual awareness pill fire could not achieve anything and instead become an accomplice of those strange forces. In the blink of an eye, Lin Yi smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. That trace of spirit elixir fire under his control easily broke into the strange energy and burned away the strange energy that was 6 to 7 times its size. Overall, this number was completely a drop in the ocean, but it represented that Lin Yi's choice was correct. Your beast seems to be good. It is possible to recover in a short time. Lin Yi relaxed and said to Lenguza with a rare smile. As for whether Lenguza could hear it or not, it did not matter. Since he'd found a way, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't drag things out. He increased the input of his consciousness, and within a controllable range, he created the most amount of consciousness elixir fire he could muster at once, charging straight at the strange energy within Lenguza's body. Immediately after the spiritual awareness pill fire was the omnipotent Zhen Qi that Lin Yi injected. In the front, the spiritual awareness pill fire swept and killed all the enemies, attacked the city and plundered the land, and the omnipotent Zhen Qi cleaned the battlefield and repaired the city wall. Under the control of Lin Yi, the two forces cooperated with each other extremely well. It was because of the omnipotent Zhen Qi that Lin Yi had a lot less to worry about. Even if the spiritual awareness pill fire accidentally hurt a little meridian in Lenguza's body, it would be repaired immediately. After half an hour, the collapse of Lenguza's genes had completely disappeared. After being repaired and nourished by the omnipotent Zhen Qi, Lenguza's genes could be said to have been completely reborn. Originally, he had a strong physique of the sea beast royal family. Now, there was a trace of mutation, and he was much stronger than before. It could be said that this was a blessing in disguise. As for the injuries on the body surface, it was easier to deal with them. Without the source of the strange forces in the deep layer, the forces on the surface of the wounds could not resist Lin Yi's attack and were soon completely removed. All the wounds were also completely healed under the repair of Lin Yi's omnipotent Zhen Qi. It's finally done. It's really tiring. Lin Yi withdrew his divine sense and Zhen Qi and could not help but let out a long sigh. The Zhen Qi was replenished by the space of the jade pendant, so it was not a big deal. However, in terms of divine sense, Lin Yi had to supply all of it himself. Moreover, he had to spend a lot of time and effort to carry out fine control. An ordinary person would not be able to persist. Ha 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 ha. That's awesome. You're really cured. After the soul of Lenguza was awakened by Lin Yi, he immediately felt the condition of his body and laughed excitedly. Then Lenguza remembered who was the reason why he was able to survive. He immediately turned his head to Lin Yi and said, "You really saved me. So from now on, you're my Lenguza's big brother. As long as Big Brother needs it, Lenguza will go through fire and water for Big Brother." Lin Yi faintly smiled and said, "If you insist, I don't mind. However, I have a lot of little brothers, and you're not the biggest one. So you have to be mentally prepared." Lenguza laughed and said, "Big Brother, you're so powerful that you must be the king of the sea beasts in the human race. It's normal for you to have a lot of little brothers. It would be strange if you didn't have any. Big Brother, don't worry. I, Lenguza, know my limits." "Well, I'm also very happy that you can say that. There's one more thing to remind you. This time, it can be considered as a blessing in disguise. From the early nascent soul stage to the early profound ascension stage. And because of my treatment, while stabilizing your strength, there are also some changes. As for whether this change is good or bad, you need to study it yourself. So, after you go back, it's best for you to go into seclusion for a period of time." Lin Yi had always taken care of his little brothers, but Lenguza was already at the early profound ascension stage. Lin Yi couldn't help him in terms of strength, so he could only tell Lenguza what he had just observed. Chapter 56:37. Lenguza put away his smile and nodded vigorously. "I know, boss, don't worry, I know what to do. In our Sea Dragon clan, only the most outstanding geniuses can advance to the profound ascension stage when they reach adulthood. Now I have advanced to the profound ascension stage before I reach adulthood. This is all thanks to boss. If I, Lenguza, still don't know how to cherish it, then I'm sorry, boss." Lin Yi was shocked. From Lenguza's words, Lin Yi could infer that there was a profound ascension stage existence in the Sea Dragon clan. But this was not surprising. After all, Snake Shichiro was already at the Yuanying stage. So it was not surprising that there was a profound ascension stage existence in the Sea Dragon clan. Fortunately, this time they did not become enemies with the sea beasts of the endless sea. Otherwise, if they provoked the Sea Dragon clan, the ancient small Jianghu would be wiped out in minutes. After all, the Sea Dragon clan was also a creature that could move on land. But why did the masters of the Sea Dragon clan never appear? Otherwise, the profound ascension stage would not be a legend of the ancient small Jianghu for thousands of years. It's good that you understand. Go out first, or else Snake Shichiro will be anxious. Although Lin Yi wanted to ask about the Sea Dragon clan, this was already a secret of the Lenguza clan. It was not good for Lin Yi to inquire about it, so he could only put it aside for now. Lenguza nodded and followed Lin Yi out of the room. When Snake Shichiro saw Lenguza behind Lin Yi, he immediately rushed up excitedly and laughed. "Good boy, I knew you were lucky. Nothing will happen to you." "That's right. Who do you think I, Lenguza, am?" "Of course." There was also Boss Lin Yi's heaven-defying methods. That was how he managed to save my life. Lenguza said proudly, and immediately started bragging about Lin Yi. Snake Shichiro was stunned. "You've acknowledged Lin Yi as your boss? He didn't force you, did he?" At this point, Snake Shichiro looked at Lin Yi in an unfriendly manner. Although Lin Yi was Lenguza's savior, if Lin Yi used this as a threat and forcefully accepted a member of the Oceanic Beast Clan as a subordinate, he would be looking down on and provoking the Oceanic Beast Clan. Lenguza snorted and said, "Snake Shichiro, what are you thinking?" "Of course, I, Lenguza, am willing to do it. Other than that, do you think anyone can force me to do something I don't want to do?" Snake Shichiro thought about it and agreed. He knew Lenguza's personality the best, so he looked at Lin Yi with an apologetic gaze. Lin Yi didn't care and waved his hand. "If you have something to say, go back and talk. I still have some things to deal with. It's not very convenient for so many of your Oceanic Beast army to stay here." Lenguza hurriedly said, Boss, don't worry, I will make them withdraw immediately. But I still want to talk with you, boss. How about you let me stay here for a few more days? Before Lin Yi could speak, Snake Shichiro objected. No, this time we made such a big fuss because of you. If you don't go back, how can this matter be resolved? Hurry up and go back with me. Come back in 2 days. Lenguza thought about it and agreed. Although he wanted to spend a few more days with Lin Yi, Snake Shichiro's words also made sense. Lenguza could only say resentfully, Fine, go back, boss. I will come back to find you in 2 days. You will still be here, right? Lin Yi scratched his head. This was really hard to say. After the end of the immemorial grand meeting, all the sects would leave the ruined town. The ruined town would become a wasteland again. If Lenguza came here to find Lin Yi, he most likely wouldn't be able to find him. Lenguza saw that Lin Yi didn't speak, so he used his front claw to scratch his chin a few times. He took out a round bead the size of a pigeon egg and handed it to Lin Yi. Boss, this is the communication bead used by the oceanic beast kings. If you want to find me, you only need to put this bead into the water on any shore of the endless sea. I will receive the message. If I want to find you, I can also sense your position through this bead. This thing is not bad. I will accept it. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. With this communication bead, it would be convenient to find Lenguza in the future. He just didn't know if Lenguza could still sense Lin Yi's position if he put this thing into the space of the jade pendant. Snake Shichiro looked at Lenguza's claws and suddenly said, Lenguza, you are already at the early stage of mysterious ascension, right? Why didn't you transform? Or 2 claws? Lenguza retracted his claws and smiled. I am still a minor, so I am still a sea dragon. I don't know if when I become an adult and transform into a sea dragon, will I directly break through the mysterious ascension stage and enter the mountain opening stage? Don't bullsh *T. There has never been a super expert in the mountain opening stage among the royal family. You should think about when you can become a real sea dragon. Maybe you still have a chance. Snake Shichiro sneered. He didn't believe Lenguza at all. Lin Yi looked at Lenguza thoughtfully, finally understanding the strength of the royal sea beasts. Sea serpents were a race that could evolve. After reaching adulthood, there was a chance for them to evolve into sea serpents. Be it talent or strength, sea serpents were obviously far superior to sea serpents, but they still weren't true dragons. If 1 in 100 of the elites of the sea serpents could evolve into sea serpents, then only 1 in 1,000 sea serpents would have the chance to become a true sea dragon. In other words, if Lenguza wanted to evolve into a sea dragon, which could be considered a real dragon, the probability was 1 in 100,000. As for now, after the mutation, Lin Yi couldn't tell how much potential Lenguza had. Maybe it only needed 1 in 100 to become a sea dragon. Or maybe it was less than 1 in a million. Lenguza and Snake Shichiro didn't notice Lin Yi's thoughts. After a few words, they said goodbye to Lin Yi. The sea beast royal family was still waiting for the report of this operation. Snake Shichiro didn't want to continue to delay, especially before the mission was completed. If there were any more mistakes, his little heart really couldn't bear it. Under the leadership of Lenguza and Snake Shichiro, the sea beast army quickly disappeared from the outskirts of the ruined town like a receding tide. Lin Yi asked Yi to gather the 4 big and 10 young ones. After he left, Lin Yi still needed to confirm the results of the Archean convention. After a short while, all the 4 big and 10 kids gathered together again. Exionegia was the first to come and stand beside Lin Yi. Chapter 5638. Lin Yi asked in surprise, Didn't you announce it before? All the details have been done. Now it's time to announce the result. Everyone said that we can only proceed with the announcement after Grand Uncle Master arrives. Exionegia's words were full of pride. It was the glory of the Green Cloud sect that Lin Yi could gain the respect of all the sections. You don't mind the trouble. All right, hurry up and announce it. I have something to say. Lin Yi waved his hand, signaling Exionegia to announce it quickly. Exionegi agreed and turned to the audience. He held his head high and announced loudly, "Everyone, I, Exionegi, will now announce the new ranking of the 4 major sects and families." The audience below the stage cooperated and gave a round of applause. In this immemorial grand meeting, the power structure could be said to have undergone earth-shattering changes, and the biggest change was the strong ascension of the Azure Cloud sect, as well as the rise of the strongest dark horse, the Thousand Blade sect. Thinking that the Thousand Blade sect, one of the top 4 sects, only had 2 members, many people were excited. They wanted to join the Thousand Blade sect after the Archaeozoic Grand Meeting. The head of the top 4 sects and families is our Green Cloud sect. The second is the Shangguan clan, the third is the Thousand Blade sect, and the last is the 5 Elements sect. The division of guards in the Archaeozoic mountain range has been determined. From now on, the distribution of resources in the Archaeozoic underworld will be decided by the new top 4 sections. Thank you. After the simple announcement, Exionegi was ready to let Lin Yi speak. Because Lin Yi said he had something to say, Exionegi naturally wouldn't talk endlessly. However, Ma Zedin didn't know that Lin Yi had something to say. After hearing Exionegi's announcement, she proudly showed off to Tribulation Jinren beside her. Tribulation Jinren, look at our 5 Elements sect, one of the top 4 sections. Do you want to join us in the future? With our friendship, I, Ma Zedin, will definitely help your Qinkuan sect. Ma Zedin was in a good mood. It was a pity that Qi Daisyi didn't come out because he colluded with the center. Otherwise, it would be even better to show off in front of Qi Daisyi. Daoist Dujia's face darkened. He snorted and said the 5 Elements sect fell from the 2nd place to the 4th place. What is there to be proud of? And you, this shameless fellow, actually using your identity as one of the big 4 to become Qing Yin sect's little brother. Even I feel ashamed for you. TSK, you're just envious, jealous, and hateful, right? No matter what, the 5 Elements sect is still one of the 4 great sects. Compared to your Qinkuan sect, which was originally the leader of the 4 great sects, the new 10 small sects are much stronger. Ma Zedin said indifferently. She had always thought that relying on Lin Yi and Jadian's sect was the smartest decision she had ever made, and from the current results, it was indeed very good. She's just a lackey of Lin Yi. What's there to be proud of? Sage Du Jie's face was full of disdain, but he was actually a little envious of Ma Zedin. Unfortunately, you don't even have a chance. Ma Zedin laughed and said, haven't you heard? The Sea Beast King that Martial Granduncle Lin Yi saved just now all recognized our Martial Granduncle as their boss. How awe-inspiring. Who else in the ancient small world can compare with him? The members of the Royal Sea Beast clan had all become Lin Yi's underlings. Ma Zedin felt that not only was her decision not wrong, but it was also a super far-sighted golden idea. There was still a big gap between the members of the 5 Elements sect and the members of the Royal Sea Beast clan. But because of Lin Yi, everyone was on the same level. Sage Du Jie also received the news. Although he wasn't sure, there might be a reason for it, so he didn't speak for a while. Seeing that Sage Du Jie had nothing to say, Ma Zedin was even more proud and continued to show off. Do you understand? Martial Granduncle Lin Yi won't accept just anyone. For example, someone like you who has no status and no skills, Martial Granduncle is too lazy to care about you. Let's not talk about the Sea Beast King, but the alchemy ability of our 5 Elements sect is beyond your reach. Do you understand? Sage Du Jie simply turned his head and ignored Ma Zedin. If he let him show off alone, he would probably get bored after a while. Lin Yi saw it clearly from the stage and was speechless. This Ma Zedin, he didn't know how to describe him. However, seeing Ma Zedin being so obedient, Lin Yi thought of his own batch of Sea Beast cores. Most of them were Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores. After taking out 360 Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores to exchange for the Spirit Jade quota, there were still more than 1,000 Golden Core Stage Sea Beast cores left, which were suitable for 5 elements sect to make golden core. Since 5 elements sect was sincere, Lin Yi naturally had to make good use of their resources. When he got back, Lin Yi was prepared to teach 5 elements sect alchemy skills. This way, their success rate and quality would improve. After all, Lin Yi had Zhang Liju's alchemy notes. In this aspect, there were many similarities. Ma Zayden, quiet. I'll talk to you about alchemy later. For now, listen to something important. Lin Yi pointed at Ma Zayden faintly, and Ma Zayden immediately cupped her fists and bowed respectfully, as if she was all ears. Then Ma Zayden took the opportunity when Lin Yi wasn't paying attention and looked at Sage Du Jia proudly. Her eyes were full of hints. See, Grand Master Lin Yi still needs me for something, right? You guys can't do it, right? He wouldn't want you even if you sent yourself to him. Lin Yi coughed and ignored Ma Zayden's actions. He took out the little flag that little food spirit gave him and opened it to the crowd. In the first round of the competition, I found a mechanism in the natural formation of the spirit jade vein. This is extremely important to the ancient Jianghu, so I'm going to tell you guys about it now. Hearing Lin Yi mention the spirit jade vein. After all, this was directly related to training resources. Who knew what Lin Yi was going to say? Lin Yi took out the speech he had prepared and continued. This mechanism can greatly increase the upper limit of the number of people who can enter the vein, as well as the time limit, but it's not without a price. The price is that you need to put in an inner core of a sea beast above the golden core stage in order to activate the mechanism. Senior Lin, may I know the exact number of people and time? Master Lin, how many golden core stage inner cores do you need? Grand Master, this must be a sect in the North Island Alliance. Chapter 5639. After all, although the inner elixirs of sea beasts were precious, the endless sea was so vast that it was still possible to hunt them. However, the Ling Yu celestial vein was only open for 10 days a year, and only 20 people could enter at a time. The amount of spiritual jade's mind was too little to supply the entire ancient underworld. This was also the reason why there were so few masters in the ancient underworld. After all, cultivation was a competition of resources. Lin Yi raised his hand and gestured for the crowd to calm down. Everyone, please calm down and listen to me. The crowd suddenly quieted down. From this, it could be seen how high Lin Yi's prestige was now. Through this mechanism, the number of people entering the Ling Yu celestial vein every year can be increased to 200, and the time limit is half a year. 360 inner elixirs of golden core stage sea beasts are required. If there are no inner elixirs of golden core stage sea beasts, 72 inner elixirs of original infant stage sea beasts can be used instead. From today onwards, the rules of entering the Ling Yu celestial vein will change. The 4 big and 10 small sects will have a fixed quota, and the rest of the quota will be exchanged with the inner elixirs of sea beasts. Many people's eyes lit up. It was indeed good news to be able to exchange the inner elixirs of sea beasts for the opportunity to enter the Ling Yu celestial vein, and it was not limited to the 4 big and 10 small sects. Lin Yi glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, "The specific allocation of the quota and the distribution of the spiritual jades will be decided by the Jadian and the other 3 big and 4 big sects after discussion. I won't say much about this." This was a little fake. Who didn't know that the Jadian had the final say in the 4 big sects? And the Jadian was Lin Yi's word. In other words, Lin Yi was the one making the final decision. Of course, no one dared to say this out loud. In fact, Lin Yi did not want to get involved in this. He sincerely hoped that Xianijia and the others could come up with a mature plan. After all, the ancient underworld would still be under them in the future. Lin Yi turned around and said to Xianijia. The latter nodded and ordered a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect to bring 360 gold core stage sea beasts inner boluses to Lin Yi. Lin Yi injected his innate qi into the small flag, causing the array pattern on the small flag to emit bursts of golden light. Then he threw all 360 golden core stage sea beast cores into a black hole that appeared on the side of the small flag. After absorbing the sea monster's inner core, the black hole slowly became wider. The black light also slowly turned white, finally forming a teleportation gate. Lin Yi pointed at the portal and said, "This year's sea beast cores will be provided by our Jadian sect. As the first trial, we don't need any sect to provide any cores, but the quota for each sect will be limited. By the way, you won't encounter any danger when you enter the Lingyu celestial vein through this teleportation gate, unless someone harms you maliciously. Once the situation is discovered, the person and the sect behind him will be permanently disqualified from entering the Lingyu celestial vein. If it was before the ancient grand meeting, the people below the stage would have already started whispering. But now that Lin Yi's prestige was high, the people below the stage tried their best not to say anything, for fear that they would lose the qualification to enter the Lingyu celestial vein. Lin Yi smiled faintly. He withdrew his innate qi and closed the teleportation gate. He rolled up the small flag and handed it to Exionejia. Then he said to the people below the stage, "After the teleportation gate is opened, people can be teleported in at any time within half a year. As long as the limit of 200 people is not exceeded, there will be no possibility of failure. When we have the quota allocation plan, we will let Exionejia handle it directly." After thinking for a while, it seemed that there was nothing more to say. Lin Yi directly waved his hand and said, "The ancient grand meeting is over. The following trade fairs and auctions will continue according to the previous arrangement. Everyone is dismissed." Exionejia was told to disperse, but as soon as Exionejia finished speaking, a large group of people surrounded him. They all wanted to get to know him first, so that they could get a head start in the fight for the free entry into Lingyu Immortal's vein. Lin Yi was speechless for a while. He thought to himself that it was fortunate that he had given the formation flag to Exionejia. Otherwise, it would be very uncomfortable for him to be surrounded. After leaving the crowd quickly, Lin Yi waved to Ma Zedin and said, "Ma Zedin, come here." Without saying a word, Ma Zedin ran over and bowed with a smile on his face. He said, "Granduncle, what can I do for you?" Lin Yi would not be polite to Ma Zedin. He directly said, "There is indeed something. How about this? After the ancient grand meeting is over, you come to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I will write down some of my experiences and techniques of alchemy for you. Go back and study them carefully. Then refine the remaining inner cores of the sea beasts in the gold core stage into golden cores. Do you understand?" "Understood. Granduncle, please rest assured." Ma Zedin was secretly happy. Lin Yi was going to put the 5 Elements sect in an important position. Moreover, he was going to give them pointers on alchemy. Ma Zedin had heard from Master Qin about Lin Yi's alchemy level. It was absolutely incredible. To be able to get pointers from Lin Yi, he would really wake up from his dream with a smile. "Okay, you can go back. Discuss with Exionejia about the Spirit Jade celestial vein. I still have something to do. I will wait for you at the Green Cloud sect in the North Island." Lin Yi waved his hand to indicate that Ma Zedin could leave. Ma Zedin quickly cupped his fists and bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Granduncle. I will rush to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island as soon as possible." To be honest, Ma Zedin could not wait to ask Lin Yi for advice on alchemy. However, Lin Yi had something to do. Ma Zedin could not help it. He could only plan to wait at the Green Cloud sect in the North Island after saying goodbye to Exionejia. Lin Yi found Yu Primordial Invincible, and Shangguan Feishing, the 3 experts in the early stage of the mysterious Ascension realm. They sat on the flying spirit beast and flew to Luo Mountain again. After rescuing the blue dragon, Lin Yi was still not assured about Defeng's safety. Therefore, he wanted to confirm it again. He brought the 3 people with him so that he could have some help in the battle. At least, they could play a role in restraining the enemy. By the time they got to Luo Mountain, the central base was already in ruins. Other than the destruction Lin Yi had caused, the glasses doctor had probably cleaned up the place after he came back as well. There was nothing of value left. Lin Yi's divine sense swept the entire base, searching inch by inch. He was afraid of seeing Defeng's body. Fortunately, there was no such result in the end. Instead, he found a message left by Defeng in a secret code. Chapter 5640. Knowing that Dafeng was fine, Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. As for leaving the ancient underworld, Lin Yi was also quite happy. At least the ancient underworld could have a relatively quiet period of development. At this time, the matters of the ancient underworld had basically come to an end. Lin Yi could finally go back to Heaven Stage Island with peace of mind. To be honest, he really missed Heaven Stage Island. Since there was nothing left in Luo Mountain, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't stay any longer. He directly let Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feixing return to Ruin Town to meet up with the people from their sects, while Lin Yi took Yue back to the Blue Cloud sect in the north first. On the way, Lin Yi decided to first tell Yue about his departure, so he controlled the flying spirit beast to fly beside Yue. Yue, I should be leaving the ancient underworld in 2 days. At that time, you will stay in the Blue Cloud sect in the north and guard it for me. If there is a problem you can't solve, ask Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feixing for help. Both of them are stronger than you and will be very good reinforcements. Lin Yi said calmly. However, Yue felt that Lin Yi was giving him a warning. Master, where are you going? Why don't you take Yue with you? Yue will definitely take care of everything for Master. Yue's face was full of hypocrisy, and he pretended to ask to take him with him. In fact, Yue's heart was already blooming with joy. Wahahaha! This little bastard Lin, he wants to leave the ancient underworld? Then won't I be free? I don't know where this little bastard is going. It's best if he doesn't come back in the future. After he leaves here, should I first take over the Blue Cloud sect? Forget it. After Lin Yi leaves, I will be the boss of the Blue Cloud sect. I don't need to take over so obviously. After all, Lin Yi will definitely arrange for Primordial Invincible and Shangguan Feixing to monitor me. Yue thought a little too much, but he maintained the hypocritical expression on his face very well. Lin Yi smiled faintly and did not pay attention to Yue. Anyway, Lin Yi would not reveal the matter of Heaven Stage Island to Yue for the time being. It was best for him to stay and take care of the Blue Cloud sect. Now Yue, who had the primordial spirit, was no longer a small puppet in the secular world. He could judge all favorable opportunities on his own, and he could also move and cultivate freely. With him, the Green Cloud sect in the North Island was still very safe. As for Yue's plan to completely get rid of Lin Yi after he became stronger, it was simply impossible. As Lin Yi's puppet, when Lin Yi wanted to kill him, he only needed to think about it. When Lin Yi brought Yue back to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, the Archean auction in the ruined town was not over yet, so Exenigia and the others had not returned. Fortunately, Wu Qintian and the others were practicing in the sect and had not seen Lin Yi for a while. When they heard that he was back, they immediately ended their practice and came out to meet him. The scene was very lively for a while. After introducing Yue to these people that Lin Yi brought from the secular world, this guy immediately got along well with Wu Qintian and the others. He bragged a little, and the atmosphere became more and more lively. Although Yue did not participate in Lin Yi's entire trip to the Archean auction, he spent half a day in the ruined town and knew everything about Lin. Although his goal was to understand Lin Yi and find a chance to get rid of his control, it was just right for him to brag to these brothers of Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head, not caring about them. He was not a person who liked to talk and brag, so naturally he had no interest in participating. He turned back to look at Lingshan, who was looking at him tenderly and affectionately. Lin Yi smiled faintly and used qi to communicate. Silly girl, do you feel like you want to eat me when you look at me like that? Lingshan blushed, knowing that Lin Yi was talking to her alone. She looked at him with a mixture of annoyance and happiness, but nodded firmly. What he meant was, "Silly girl wants to eat you. Do you dare let me eat you?" Lin Yi felt a little awkward. At his current level, he didn't have to worry about what happened after a man and a woman were in love, but he still had so many girlfriends. Meng Yao and the other girls were still unconscious. If he did something with someone else, he'd feel like he'd let Meng Yao and the others down. It was because of this little obsession in his heart that Lin Yi didn't have a deeper relationship with any of his women after reaching his current level. In actuality, Lin Yi wasn't someone who took the initiative and was a bit shy as well. People like him. He suddenly remembered the first time he came down the mountain to Meng Yao's house, when Yushu caught him wiping his snot. Thinking of Meng Yao and Yushu, Lin Yi's heart felt heavy. His strength was enough to dominate the entire ancient Jianghu, but it wasn't much on Sky-class Island. He didn't know when he'd be able to see Zhang Liju again. Ling Shan was preparing to have a good talk with Lin Yi. After all, they'd been apart a lot, and it wasn't easy for them to come to the ancient Jianghu. Lin Yi had been running around everywhere, but there were other girls around him. Ziyu and Lin Yi didn't seem to have a clear relationship, but the girl was all grown up now, and her feelings for Lin Yi weren't that pure anymore. As expected, Ziyu skipped over to Lin Yi and reached out to pinch his face. "Lin Yi bro, why were you gone for so long? We were in isolation before, and you didn't even wake us up when you came back. If we didn't come out now, we wouldn't be able to see you, right? I heard you're going back to Sky-class Island. Can you take us there? You guys can't go. Just stay here and train. I'll be back." Lin Yi smiled faintly as he stroked Ziyu's hair lovingly. This girl was becoming more and more beautiful, and it was hard for Lin Yi to put his finger on her, but he'd just have to take it one step at a time. "Oh, but can't we go back to the common world?" Ziyu didn't have any interest in staying here. She liked crowds. "You guys can go back, as long as you have enough spirit jade. We don't lack spirit jade here." Lin Yi really didn't lack spirit jade now, and there would only be more and more of them in the ancient Jianghu. "If you guys want to go back after I leave, just get Exionegia to activate the formation. Alright, go back to Sky-class Island then. But be careful, come visit us often." Ziyu didn't want him to leave. Chapter 56-41. "I miss Qin, she." Ziyu's eyes reddened. "There's been no news of her, and I'm pretty worried. You should try to find her as soon as possible when you get to Sky-class Island." "I will." Lin Yi sighed softly. He still had a couple of girls missing from Sky-class Island, and he didn't know where they went. It was time to go back and look for them. Chikuin and Chijio couldn't interrupt either and could only giggle. Their strength had been increasing really fast recently, and they were really happy. Ling Shan, on the other hand, waited patiently for Ziyu to finish. She was a little sister, after all, and she had to let her have her way. But just as they were talking, a blue cloud disciple came running in. "Master," the head of 5 Elements sect, Ma Zedin, and their refiner, Master Qin, are here to see you. Lin Yi paused. "Already? Why aren't Exionegia and the others back yet?" Ling Shan didn't have any good feelings towards this Ma Zedin or whatever 5 Elements sect. As expected, 5 Elements sect didn't have anything good. The common world was like this, and the ancient Jianghu was like this as well. It wasn't easy for her to talk to Lin Yi, so where did these troublemakers come from? Lin Yi saw that Ling Shan was about to go berserk as well, and smiled as he held her hand. "These two are refiners from the ancient Jianghu. Let's go see them together." "Sure." Ling Shan felt Lin Yi's warm and strong hand, and that little bit of unhappiness disappeared. A sweet smile appeared on her face as she nodded. As long as she could be with Lin Yi, she would be very happy. "Right. Is there any news of my sister, Songling Rui? I miss her too," Ling Shan said softly. Lin Yi fell silent after hearing Ziyu mention Lin Yi, and held her hand lightly. "Don't worry, she'll be fine. I'll bring them back when I get back." Ling Shan was a little disappointed, but there was nothing she could do about it. She didn't say anything else after that. Ziyu saw Lin Yi and Ling Shan walk out hand in hand, and a slight disappointment flashed in her eyes. She turned around and went back to bragging with Yu, Yi, and the others, so Lin Yi didn't notice that at all. As far as Ziyu was concerned, she'd occupied Lin Yi for too long already. She'd just let Ling Shan have this time. In the guest hall of the Green Cloud sect, Ma Zedin and Master Qin stood respectfully while waiting for Lin Yi. They had no intention of sitting down. Clearly, they were very used to the change in their identities. Seeing Lin Yi and Ling Shan come out, the two immediately cupped their fists and bowed. Ma Zedin, Qin Biden, greets Master Lin. Greetings, Marshal Grandaunt's wife. Ling Shan felt a sweetness in her heart. She felt that it was a bit of a mouthful to call her Grandmaster's wife, but since she was Lin Yi's wife, she didn't have to fuss about it. Even her impression of this Ma Zedin and Qin Biden changed a little. This was the first time Lin Yi heard of Master Chen's name, so it was Qin Biden. What a mouthful! No wonder he always called him Master. After signaling for Ling Shan to sit beside the main seat, Lin Yi waved his hand. Sit down and talk. The two of them expressed their gratitude and sat down, respectfully. Qin Biden thought for a moment and stood up. She cupped her fists and bowed. Uncle Master Lin, I have offended you before. Please punish me. I've already forgotten what happened in the past. What's there to punish? Lin Yi smiled faintly and waved his hand casually. Sit down. We've all been serving different masters before, that's all. From now on, we're one family. No need to talk like that. Thank you for your magnanimity, Master Lin. Qin Biden's face was full of gratitude. After bowing again, she sat back on the chair and said, To be honest, ever since I saw Marshal Granduncle's alchemy skills for the first time, I've been yearning for Marshal Granduncle. Thanks to sect leader Ma's wisdom, I have the opportunity to ask Marshal Granduncle for alchemy skills. Ma Zedin was proud of himself in his heart. He deeply believed Qin Biden's words, but he put on a stern expression on his face and said, Elder Qin, this time Master Granduncle is magnanimous and won't fuss over it with you. But you should remember this lesson. If something similar happens again, don't blame me, Ma Zedin, for being impolite. Yes, Master Ma is right. Qin Biden nodded humbly, not at all like the arrogance Lin Yi had when they first met. Although Master Lin forgave you, and I can't punish you anymore, I'll remember this mistake. In the future, listen to Master Lin's teachings and do things for Master Lin to make up for your mistakes. Do you understand? Ma Zedin's words were blunt, but in fact, it was just to make Lin Yi feel more comfortable. After all, Lin Yi said that he didn't care about the past, but who knew if he really didn't care about it? If there were any knots left in his heart, it would always be a hidden danger. He might as well make it clear first, not only to let Lin vent his anger, but also to completely wash away Qin Biden's impression in Lin Yi's heart. Lin Yi was naturally aware of Ma Zedin's intentions, so he immediately smiled faintly. Okay, I said that the past is in the past, so you don't have to worry about it. Yes, I will obey Master Lin's decree. Ma Zedin was completely relieved this time, knowing that Lin Yi really wouldn't find trouble with Qin Biden again. However, as she spoke, she became more and more respectful. Lin Yi thought that he was about to return to Heavenstep Island, and he didn't have much time to stay in the ancient, small underworld. There were still many things to deal with, so he didn't want to beat around the bush with Ma Zedin and Qin Biden, so he directly said, This time I called you here to exchange alchemy experiences with you. You should be mentally prepared, right? Ma Zedin and Qin Biden hurriedly waved their hands and said, We dare not. Master Lin is too polite. Disciple is here to learn. How can I be qualified to exchange with Master Lin? You don't have to be modest. To tell you the truth, my alchemy method is completely different from the alchemy methods of this era. It is the ancient alchemy method. Although some of the techniques are interlinked, it might not be able to help you much. So it's best that you don't have too much hope. Lin Yi was confident that Zhang Liju's alchemy notes could help increase the success rate and quality of 5-element sex alchemy. But of course, he couldn't be too confident. What if it was really useless? Chapter 5642. After a little hesitation, Ma Zedong carefully asked, "Martial uncle, please allow this disciple to ask, what is the difference between your alchemy technique and ours? Don't tell me you don't use divine sense alchemy fire?" This time it was Lin Yi's turn to be surprised. How could there be people in the ancient Jianghu who knew that alchemy fire was not something that could be condensed with divine sense? When he first came to the ancient Jianghu, he didn't know that there was such a thing as divine sense alchemy fire. Chinese? Novels. Seeing the surprised expression on Lin Yi's face, Ma Zedong and Chen Baidan immediately became excited. Chen Baidan rushed to ask, "Martial uncle, did you really master the legendary true qi attribute alchemy fire?" Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless. True qi attribute alchemy fire was already a legendary technique in the ancient Jianghu. There were many records in the secular world, right? Although it wasn't to the extent of being common, it was just a little better than common, right? Speaking of which, the 5 Elements sect of the secular world and the 5 Elements Chamber of Commerce of the Heaven Step Island did not produce any alchemy experts. There should be some connection between them and the 5 Elements sect of the ancient Jianghu. This connection might be traced back to the Heaven Step Island. Was the inheritance of the divine sense alchemy fire and the true qi alchemy fire separated? Why are you so excited? Lin Yi asked in confusion. From his point of view, although the pure qi alchemy fire could be divided into different attributes, the spirit alchemy fire was basically a general type of alchemy fire without attributes. However, there didn't seem to be any difference between the two. This could be most directly reflected in the super alchemy fire bomb. After becoming a bomb, the power of the 2 alchemy fires was actually the same. Ma Zedong took a deep breath, calmed her emotions, and said, "Martial uncle, don't you know? Our ancient Jianghu's divine sense alchemy fire is actually incomplete. Although it can be used for alchemy, it is said that it can only be used to refine profound level 1 pills. It's just that there is no profound level 1 alchemist in the current ancient Jianghu, so there is no way to verify this legend." Grand Martial Uncle, sect leader Ma is right, because the divine sense pill fire is flawed. Although the upper limit of alchemy cannot be verified, the success rate of alchemy is enough to prove this problem. In fact, in the records of alchemy, the success rate of alchemy should not be so low. The main reason is the lack of a true qi attribute, alchemic fire, Chen Baidan said excitedly. Originally, he was worried whether Lin Yi's superb alchemy skills would be suitable for him, but now there was no need to worry about it. If Lin Yi really mastered the method of condensing the true qi Dan fire, then as long as he found a way to integrate the divine sense Dan fire, he could immediately double the level of alchemy. Lin Yi patted his forehead, feeling a little annoyed in his heart. All along he had used 2 kinds of pill fires to create super pill fire bombs, but he had never thought that in fact the spiritual pill fire and the true qi pill fire could be completely fused together to refine pills. After all, the spiritual pill fire did not have an attribute, and any attribute of the true qi pill fire could be integrated into the spiritual pill fire without any hindrance. In this way, the problem of Lin Yi being unable to refine pills for a long time could be solved. After all, Lin Yi had no problem condensing any pill fire. The only obstacle was changing the temperature and intensity of the pill fire. After having the experience of controlling the direction of explosion of the super pill fire bomb, Lin Yi felt that after adding the spiritual pill fire, there was a great chance to overcome the previous difficulties. If it were not for Ma Zedong and Chen Baidan, Lin Yi would have already tried it on the spot. In this case, I will first teach you some simple mnemonics to condense the true qi Dan fire. After you have figured it out, I will give you some alchemy experience. If you can successfully integrate the 2 kinds of pill fires, it can be regarded as finding a new possibility for the development of the small Jianghu in ancient times. As he spoke, Lin Yi stood up and walked to the side of the desk. He picked up the pen and paper that he had asked someone to prepare earlier and quickly copied down some of the methods of condensing the true Qi-Dan fire. These weren't the things in Zhang Liju's notes, but some scattered records that Lin Yi had collected on Sky-class Island. It was much better than the common world's, but still not as good as Zhang Liju's. Lin Yi didn't know what Zhang Liju thought about teaching him the methods of refining the true Qi-Dan fire, so he usually wouldn't take out Zhang Liju's notes if he could substitute them. Ma Zedin and Qin Baidan looked at each other. They knew that Lin Yi was copying down the methods of condensing the true Qi-Dan fire from the legends, and all of a sudden they felt an itch in their hearts. But they didn't dare walk behind Lin Yi to look, afraid that they would make Lin Yi unhappy. They could only keep twisting their bodies, as if the chair they were sitting on was full of nails. After a while, Lin Yi came back with 2 or 3 pages of paper and handed it to Ma Zedin. The paper was thin, but it made Ma Zedin feel as if it weighed 1,000 kilograms. She raised her trembling hands to receive it. "Thank you, Grand Master." Ma Zedin glanced at it and immediately thanked Lin Yi solemnly. Qin Baidan followed beside Ma Zedin and bowed solemnly, expressing her gratitude to Lin Yi. Lin Yi waved his hand nonchalantly. "The fact that you guys can understand it is the best way to thank me. Start studying it now. I'll go write down some more notes and give them to you later." Ma Zedin and Qin Baidan were overjoyed and thanked him again. After suppressing their excitement, they started studying Lin Yi's handwritten notes. They realized that Lin Yi's notes were all methods of forming true Qi-Dan fire, and so they took one each and started reading. Lin Yi didn't bother with them anymore and turned around to write down some notes and tips. It was still the stuff he collected on Sky-class Island, and it was no problem to give it to Ma Zedin and the others. After he was done, Lin Yi realized that Ling Shan had been sitting quietly on the chair the whole time, watching Lin Yi's every move with a gentle gaze. Lin Yi put down his pen and smiled. "What's wrong with you today? You seem a little different from before." Ling Shan shook her head with a smile. "Silly girl is still a silly girl. I just want to look at you a few more times. Otherwise, you'll be going back to Sky-class Island soon." Lin Yi paused, not expecting Ling Shan to say something like that. But it seemed that his conversation with Chen, she had touched on Ling Shan's sensitive side, making her so gentle. Chapter 56-43. Ling Shan wanted to say something, but remembered that there were 2 outsiders here. She turned her head and didn't say anything. In actuality, Ma Zedin and Qin Baidan were in a state where they'd forgotten themselves. There was nothing else in their minds other than the refinement fire, not to mention the fact that Ling Shan was just talking to Lin Yi in a whisper. Even if she were to take a gong and bang it in their ears, it wouldn't attract their attention. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Ma Zedin and Qin Baidan. He found that these 2 guys were really talented in alchemy. In such a short time, they had already successfully formed a type of alchemy fire. Ma Zedin's alchemy fire was fire, while Qin Baidan's alchemy fire was wood. They could already control the temperature and strength of the alchemy fire. This made Lin Yi especially envious. Success! It really is a Qi element refinement fire. With this refinement fire, the quality and success rate of my refinement will increase greatly. Ma Zedin exclaimed excitedly after controlling the fire in her hand. Qin Baidan wasn't far behind either. She followed suit and said something similar. Lin Yi smiled. "You 2 are indeed masters of alchemy, to be able to grasp the method in such a short time. It's a cause for celebration." In fact, this kind of basic method was originally a simple entry-level method. It was just like some brain teasers. Those who didn't know would never understand it, but once someone said the answer, everyone would have a feeling of sudden enlightenment and feel that it was actually so simple. Ma Zedin and Qin Baidan had this feeling. They were trapped in a room before, and all they could see was the things in the room. Lin Yi was like the person who pushed open a window, letting them realize that there was such a vast world and endless scenery outside. It's all thanks to the guidance of the Grand Master. Otherwise, us brothers would have been frogs in the well forever. We didn't know that there was such a whole new world in refinement. Ma Zedin sincerely bowed to Lin Yi. If it could be said that Ma Zedin was forced to rely on Lin Yi because of Lin Yi's strength back in the archaic meeting, then she was completely convinced now. It wasn't just because Lin Yi had taught them the way to form the pure Qi attribute pellet fire, but also because of Lin Yi's selflessness in the art of pelletization. If it were Ma Zedin and the others, they wouldn't have so easily taught their own pelletization skills to others. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi really hadn't taught them the best of Zhang Liju's skills. Lin Yi looked at the Qi refinement fire in their hands and felt it before speaking. This is just a normal Qi refinement fire. Have you tried merging it with the spirit refinement fire? Chen Baidin glanced at Ma Zedin and said shamefully, reporting to Grand Master, "This disciple has tried but was completely unable to grasp the gist of it. It seems that there is still a long way to go before I can successfully use the fusion of two kinds of pill fires to refine pills." Ma Zedin nodded in agreement. The two obviously couldn't merge the two refinement fires in one go. Lin Yi had a lot of experience in this area, but the problem was that his experience was only suitable for super refinement fire bombs, so it wasn't convenient for him to talk about it. As for demonstrating it on the spot, it was even more impossible. They couldn't even control the temperature and strength of the refinement fire. Wouldn't they just embarrass themselves? And you guys study it well. The flag of refinement in the Archean martial world will depend on you guys from now on. Lin Yi nodded with the air of a grandmaster, and after a few words of encouragement, he gave the two of them the experience he had prepared. "Grandmaster, you're too courteous. With you here, the flag of refinement will never belong to us brothers." Ma Zedin took the thin stack of papers and smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. She was still complimenting Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't explain much and waved his hand to let them go. Anyway, they would naturally know that Lin Yi had left the Archean martial world in the future. However, with Yu Yi, Primordial Invincible, and Shangguan Feixing, the three nascent soul stage masters, even if they knew that Lin Yi wasn't there, they wouldn't dare to betray the Green Cloud sect. After sending the two away, Lin Yi didn't have time to talk to Lingshan. The communication bead that Lenguza gave him in his pocket lit up. Obviously, Lenguza was looking for him. They had only been separated for a short while, and Lenguza had already returned to the depths of the Endless Sea. Lin Yi was confused. He could only inform Lingshan and fly to the sea near the Green Cloud sect in the north and put the communication bead into the sea. After coming into contact with the water of the Endless Sea, the communication bead immediately emitted a dazzling light. A shadow of Lenguza appeared in front of Lin Yi. "Boss, this is the location of the Green Cloud sect in the north?" "That's great. It's quite close to where I am now. Wait for me, I'll be there soon." Lenguza's image laughed loudly as he spoke to Lin Yi with a face full of enthusiasm. "That's right." Lin Yi smiled and said, "Why are you looking for me so soon? Have you already returned to the clan and met your people?" Lenguza shook his head and said, "Not yet, but I've already contacted the clan. Snake Shichiro did a good job this time and told them about your contributions. So, the clan told me to invite you to our clan's land as a guest." "Invite me to your clan?" Lin Yi found it strange. Normally, didn't the sea beasts hate human practitioners? "Boss, this is an invitation from our Sea Serpent King himself. You can't just give him face. Otherwise, Lenguza, won't be able to go back in the future." Lenguza was obviously happy that the Sea Serpent King invited Lin Yi. After all, this was a gift from Lin Yi for saving Lenguza. It indirectly showed that the Sea Serpent King cared about Lenguza. As for whether this was the real situation, it would have to wait until he returned to see the situation. Lin Yi thought for a while and didn't refuse. Although he planned to return to Heaven Island in a few days, he still had to leave some time for the Sea Serpent King. He could also discuss with the Sea Serpent King about the Sea Beast Cores in the future. "All right, Then I'll take the liberty to go with you. How much longer until you arrive? Lin Yi looked back in the direction of the green cloud sect and saw a disciple in the distance. He waved his hand at him. Before the disciple came near, Lenguza already replied, I'm already here. Boss, do you see me? Chapter 5644. As expected of a mutated, mystic, early-phase sea serpent, its speed in the sea was even faster than flying spirit beasts. Whoever was targeted by it in the endless sea wouldn't be able to escape its clutches. Lin Yi didn't expect Lenguza to come so quickly. He wanted to ask this Blue Cloud sect disciple to call Lingshan and Wu Qintian over to talk to them, but it seemed like it was too late. He could only ask this disciple to tell them where Lin Yi went so that they wouldn't worry. After receiving Lin Yi's order, the disciple immediately turned around and went back. Lenguza also came to the shore at almost the same time and laughed at Lin Yi. Boss, you didn't wait too long, right? I used all my strength to come here. I'm sorry. Actually, you didn't have to use all your strength to come here. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head, but what he said was the truth. I didn't want to let you wait too long. Plus, I wanted you to see the place of the Sea Serpent clan as soon as possible, so I was a bit impatient. Let's go now. Lenguza scratched his head with his front claws, looking simple and honest. He didn't look like a mystical, early-phase sea beast at all. I knew you would be in a hurry, so I didn't go back to say anything. Lin Yi wasn't surprised at all. Looking at Lenguza's speed just now, he knew that this guy wouldn't let Lin Yi dawdle here. Lenguza laughed and turned to Lin Yi. Boss, get on my back. Because it's a bit far, flying spirit beasts aren't as fast as me. It's best if we can go back as soon as possible. All right, then I'll have to trouble you. Lin Yi didn't refuse and directly jumped on Lenguza's back. He was a Yuan spirit anyway, so he didn't need to worry about dying in the endless sea without flying spirit beasts. At most, he could fly by himself. Besides, with Lenguza, he definitely wouldn't encounter any danger in the endless sea. It's my Lenguza's honor to be able to carry Boss on my back. Boss, sit tight. We're leaving now. Then Lenguza arched his body and shot out like lightning, directly diving into the endless sea, leaving a 7-meter-high waterline behind as he quickly disappeared into the distance. Lin Yi stood on Lenguza's broad back and didn't feel any bumps, but he still maintained a very high speed. In the blink of an eye, the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island became a black on the horizon and finally disappeared. Lenguza, your sea beast clan, seems to be very united. When we rescued you this time, the entire endless sea was rioting. Lin Yi's consciousness noticed that some of the sea beasts avoided Lenguza when they saw him. They waited respectfully for him to pass before continuing their actions. Lin Yi said this casually. Lenguza laughed and said, Boss, you're wrong. There's no such thing as unity in the endless sea. It's just the law of the jungle. Because the sea beast royal family is at the top of the food chain, no sea beast dares to disobey the orders of our royal family. So it's a high-handed rule. Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully. In this case, it seemed much easier to let the people in the ancient small Zhenghu by the inner pellets of the sea beasts with a part of the spirit jades or other tools. Of course, hunting sea beasts was also a way to cultivate. As long as the sea beast royal family didn't care, they could choose to do so. Boss, you can say that, but we prefer to say that the strong are respected. In the endless sea, the strong are respected and worshipped. I heard that the human clan also has such a tradition, but compared to our endless sea, perhaps there's still a gap. Lenguza said proudly. Lin Yi was silent. The sea beasts in the endless sea usually seemed to be loose, and the royal family didn't often manage them. However, when it was necessary, they could mobilize more than 90% of the sea beasts in the shortest time. On the contrary, the human clan seemed to have a strict hierarchy. For example, in the ancient small Zhenghu, there were the 4 big ones and 10 small ones. However, Once something happened, the probability of each sea beast clan fighting alone or even stabbing others in the back was 80 to 90%. Lin, he shook his head. This idea just flashed through his mind. Although it was a little heavy, it wasn't something he should consider now. Lenguza, if I say that we need a batch of sea beast dawn at the gold core stage or even the nascent soul stage every year, will it cause a dispute between the human clan and the sea beasts? Although he knew that it was unlikely, Lin still needed to confirm it. Sure enough, Lenguza shook his head and said, Boss, if you need it, of course there's no problem. But I don't know if the quantity is large. If it's too large, it might be a little troublesome. Lin calculated in his heart. The spirit jade immortal veins dawn could be hunted by each sect. After all, the rules had been set, and they couldn't be too comfortable. Now, the sea beast dawn that they wanted to exchange for were mainly used to refine elixirs. Ma Zayden, the head of the 5 Element sect, had received the True Chi Dan Fire Heart Chant and related notes on alchemy from Lin Yi. It would definitely improve the level of alchemy in the 5 Elements sect by several levels, so the demand for sea beast dawn would certainly increase. Completely relying on hunting sea beasts couldn't meet this demand, so Lin had to prepare for a rainy day. Every year, we need about 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn. The ratio between the nascent soul stage, the gold core stage, and the foundation establishment stage should be 1 to 3 to 6. Lin reckoned that if these inner dawn were used to refine elixirs, it should be enough to supply the development needs of the small ancient underworld. So he didn't have the nerve to say more. Lenguza turned his head and said in astonishment, 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn, so little? Then there's no problem. I thought Boss wanted more than 100,000 inner dawn. Lin was speechless. Only now did he remember that his little brother was one of the members of the Endless Seas royal family and was definitely a local tycoon. A mere 2,000 to 3,000 inner dawn was indeed nothing in his eyes. But Lin didn't intend to change his mind. In any case, it was fine as long as it was enough. The small ancient underworld might not have enough to exchange for more. Boss, why don't you ask for more? In any case, although we sea beasts also like to eat inner dawn, it takes a long time to digest 1 inner dawn. It's far less efficient than eating meat directly. In the entire endless sea, tens of thousands of sea beasts die of natural causes every year, let alone those that die unnaturally. Lenguza really didn't regard Lin as an outsider and told him about this matter in detail. Lin faintly smiled and said, Let's talk about this later. As long as we can reach an agreement with your sea beast clan, someone will naturally be responsible for purchasing. I'm just asking about this possibility first. Chapter 56:45. Lenguza said straightforwardly, All right then. In the future, when you need dawn, just send someone to find me. I will definitely get it done for you. Originally, Lenguza wanted to say that he would give Lin a batch of dawn. However, looking at Lin Yi's expression, it seemed that they wanted to cooperate for a long time. Therefore, he didn't say anything definite. After all, he was only a junior in the royal family, so his words didn't have much power. All right, I will have to trouble you in the future. Lin said politely. Although Lenguza had recognized Lin as his boss, he was still a member of the royal family of the sea beasts. Before he had a deeper understanding of his character, Lin wouldn't casually order Lenguza around. Boss, you are too polite. If you didn't save me, I would only have this dawn left. Lenguza laughed and said frankly, To be honest, if I had enough power, it wouldn't be a problem to give you a batch of dawn every year. Unfortunately, as a member of the royal family, I am just a marginal character who can't say anything in the clan. Can't say anything and still make the entire Endless Sea riot? Lin asked curiously. After you were kidnapped, didn't the royal family mobilize all the sea beasts to rescue you? Being able to have such a formation, you should be an important member of the clan, right? Lenguza shook his head and said carelessly, Boss, you don't understand our sea, Flood Dragon clan. As the overlord of the Endless Sea, if a member of the clan was kidnapped and we didn't do anything, wouldn't our prestige be ruined? So, instead of saying that it was to save me, it was to save the face of the royal family. You sound so pitiful. If it was really like this, you wouldn't have invited me over, right? Lin Yi didn't think that Lenguza would lie, but he still analyzed it for him. Lenguza laughed and said, "That's true. I didn't expect the patriarch to suddenly invite you over. Maybe it's because Snake Shichiro said a lot of good things about you?" After a slight pause, Lenguza continued, "Boss, I am actually the third in line to the throne, but my mother is a sea snake, so in terms of bloodline, I am not particularly pure, so I have never been valued by the clan. But don't worry, boss, if anyone dares to make things difficult for you, I, Lenguza, will not let them off easily, even if I have to die." Lin Yi was slightly startled. Previously, Lenguza had been speaking in a relaxed and casual tone, but the last few sentences revealed a rare sense of seriousness. It seemed very serious. Obviously, Lenguza wasn't a fool. He thought that Lin Yi might not have a smooth journey, so he let Lin Yi be mentally prepared in advance. At the same time, he also expressed his determination to protect Lin Yi. Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Lenguza laughed and resumed his previous tone. "Boss, you are a rare, distinguished guest. Look at me talking about useless things. Let me introduce the scenery of the endless sea to you." Since Lenguza had changed the topic, Lin Yi cooperated and didn't say anything more. Instead, he talked about various things in the endless sea with Lenguza. After half an hour, Lenguza caught up with Snake Shichiro and his team of sea beasts. After greeting Snake Shichiro, Lin Yi and Snake Shichiro met up and continued their journey to the deep part of the endless sea. With the addition of Snake Shichiro, Lenguza's conversation became more and more lively. It also let Lin Yi know that, according to the human's words, Snake Shichiro could be considered as Lenguza's cousin, because Lenguza's mother was an elder of Snake Shichiro's tribe. No wonder Snake Shichiro and Lenguza got along so well playing together since they were young. It turned out that there was such a layer of relationship. After half a day, this team arrived at a small island in the deep part of the endless sea. This was where the king's palace of the sea flood dragon tribe was located. Boss, don't be fooled by this small island. In fact, the part under the sea is very big. That's the main part of the palace. It's a pity that I can't take you to visit it this time. Unless the patriarch personally gives the permission, outsiders are forbidden to enter. Lenguza turned his head and said to Lin Yi with a regretful expression. Lin Yi didn't care about it. He didn't come here to visit the Sea Flood Dragon Palace, so he smiled and said, "It's okay. It's good enough to be a guest on the island. Lenguza, you don't need to worry about it too much." "Hey, isn't this Lenguza? You're finally back. Only you could be captured by the human race. What a shame. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't have the face to come back." Before Lin Yi and Lenguza could get on the island, a sea flood dragon appeared nearby and ridiculed Lenguza. Originally, Lin Yi thought that this was Lenguza's tribe coming to welcome Lenguza's return. Now, it seemed like he was thinking too much. Lenguza snorted and said bluntly, "Lan Gully, don't waste my time here. I don't want to argue with you today. Get lost." "Hey, your temper seems to have increased. Is it because I haven't taught you a lesson for so long that you've forgotten the pain?" Lan Gully glanced at Lenguza disdainfully. As if he had suddenly noticed Lin Yi, he pointed his claw at Lin Yi and said, "You actually let a human sit on your back? Lenguza, you're really promising." In the simple hierarchy of the sea beasts, those who could carry others were existences of low status. For example, back in Ruin's town, the sea crab that carried Snake Shichiro was merely a means of transportation. Now that Lenguza had allowed Lin Yi to stand on his back, it was tantamount to placing himself in a lowly position. To Lenguza, Lin Yi was his boss, so there was no problem with him doing this. However, in Lan Gully's eyes, Lenguza was ruining the reputation of the sea serpent tribe. Despicable human, get off Lenguza's back immediately. Although this bastard is also a despicable thing, he's still not someone a human like you can compare to. Lan Gully shouted at Lin Yi unceremoniously. He didn't care if he was hurting Lenguza's reputation. How dare you? Who are you calling despicable? Do you believe that I won't kill you? Lenguza instantly exploded. He propped up half of his body and shouted at Longully. Longully was also a direct descendant of the Sea Serpent King and could be considered as Lenguza's cousin. However, his bloodline was pure and his talent far surpassed that of the previous Lenguza, now that he had the strength of a nascent soul stage cultivator. Although he was the fourth successor, he had never regarded Lenguza with any importance. Chapter 56-46. Longully laughed heartily. Yo, you're really ambitious now. You actually dare to challenge me. Looks like it's been too long since I've dealt with you that you've forgotten who you are. As Lenguza did not reveal his profound ascension initial stage aura, Longully still thought that Lenguza was still the same Lenguza, that he could do whatever he wanted. However, he did not know that what Lenguza said was the truth. Due to the new and old hatred, he really had the intention to kill Longully. If it wasn't for the fact that the Sea Serpent clan had very few members and that it was forbidden for the clansmen to kill each other, Lenguza might have already been killed by Longully. However, because of this rule, he could only forcefully suppress the killing intent in his heart. Snake Shichiro stood awkwardly at the side and did not dare to interrupt. He was also a relative of the Sea Serpent clan, and he had a trace of the Sea Serpent bloodline in him. However, the dispute between these two members of the Sea Serpent clan was not something that he could interfere in. Lin, he did not mind. He knew that there was no true Sea Serpent clan in the entire Sea Serpent clan. Currently, the strongest one was only at the profound ascension stage. After mastering the method of using divine sense to execute martial techniques, Lin could already ignore all opponents below the mountain opening stage. We humans have a saying, a good dog doesn't block the way. Lenguza looks like the Sea Serpent clan's royal clan does not know this. Lin Yi's expression did not change as he spoke indifferently. However, these words were like the fuse that ignited a barrel of explosives. Lenguza reacted quickly and laughed. Boss, don't mind him. Even in our Sea Serpent clan, there are some uneducated people who like to look for trouble. Longully was instantly enraged. This damned human compared him to a dog, and Lenguza even said that he was uneducated. This was simply intolerable. With a sharp howl, Longully did not waste any more words. He soared into the sky from the sea and attacked Lenguza and Lin Yi. This was not the first time he had bullied Lenguza, so there was really nothing for him to worry about. Lin Yi snorted coldly. He did not give Lenguza a chance to make a move. With a wave of his hand, he unleashed a beam of 5 elements, killing Qi. The 5 elements killing Qi unleashed by his divine sense was completely different from the 5 elements killing Qi unleashed by his Yuanshin. Lenguza's vision blurred for a moment before he was sent flying by the tremendous force. His slender body straightened up, and with a flash he plunged into the distant sea like an arrow, causing a huge splash. Boss, you're so awesome. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Lenguza laughed heartily. Although he couldn't personally take revenge, Lin Yi's actions made him feel extremely refreshed. Let's go, we'll head to the island first. Lin Yi casually waved his hand. Such a domineering move was just to show his attitude. Those who came were guests, and the one who invited Lin Yi was the Sea Flood Dragon King. Not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry could jump out and humiliate Lin Yi. As long as they dared to jump out, Longully would be the best example. Snake Shichiro understood Lin Yi's meaning. Therefore, he looked at Lin Yi with reverence. This human was truly ruthless and confident. He was probably the only one who dared to come to the Flood Dragon Island to establish his might, right? Once they reached the island, Lin Yi jumped off Lenguza's body. Although Lenguza did not mind, Lin Yi also had to consider the way others looked at Lenguza. On this point, Longully's words were not wrong. Damned human! How dare you sneak attack me? Longully's furious roar came from behind. Clearly, he hadn't learned his lesson from the previous attack. Lin Yi frowned slightly. After hearing the commotion over here, there were already quite a few sea serpents gathering here. Adding Lan Gully into the mix wouldn't be enough, but the commotion would only get louder and louder. Where did this human come from? The Flood Dragon Island does not welcome you. Scram immediately. The sea flood dragon that came first raised its head and roared at Lin Yi with a stern expression. Lan Gully arrived on the island at the right time and blocked Lin Yi with the sea flood dragon that came later. He glared at Lin Yi viciously. After noticing that a few of his clansmen had come over, Lan Gully's heart was filled with confidence. Indeed, he didn't see how Lin Yi attacked him just now. Although he was sent flying, it didn't cause any substantial damage. At most, it was just a little pain. Lan Gully was indeed afraid of Lin Yi. However, he would not be afraid to this extent. He had also heard that the humans in the ancient underworld had never surpassed the profound ascension stage of the nascent soul great circle. At the same level, sea beasts were stronger than humans. Not to mention, he was the king of the sea beasts, a sea flood dragon. To be sent flying by Lin Yi, he must have underestimated his opponent. Moreover, this human must have used some shameful method to do so. Lan Gully's mind spun rapidly. Finally, he came to this conclusion. Human, scram off the Flood Dragon Island. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. Another sea flood dragon joined in and berated with a stern expression. In fact, they had received a notice and knew that Lenguza would bring a human to the island. Therefore, they came to stop him. Otherwise, if a human came up, they would have killed him without a second word. Why would they have the time to be so noisy? Lenguza said angrily, Boss Lin, he was invited by the patriarch. Which one of you dares to chase him away? Are you all trying to rebel? The sea flood dragons were stunned. Because they knew that Lenguza wasn't lying, they didn't know how to continue. Were they going to let them off just like that? Then why did they come to stop him? Do you think the patriarch invited him just because you said so? Do you have any proof? He's just a lowly human. What right does he have to be invited by the patriarch? Lan Gully said with a laugh. He continued to mock Lin Yi. Lin Yi was speechless at this kind of idiot who didn't learn from his mistakes. He simply sent out another wave of 5 elements killing Qi and sent Lan Gully flying again. This time, Lin Yi's attack was slightly heavier. If it was the previous perfected Dunan, he might have vomited blood and suffered serious injuries. However, the sea flood dragon's strong body helped Lan Gully avoid injury. After rolling a few times on the ground, he came back as if nothing had happened. However, there was a hint of fear in his eyes when he looked at Lin Yi. I was invited by your sea flood dragon king as a guest. If you don't believe me, go back and ask your king. Or should I say, is this how you sea flood dragons treat your guests? If that's the case, then this flood dragon island isn't worth my visit. Lin Yi sneered. When he said the last sentence, his face was full of disdain and contempt for the Flood Dragon Island. Chapter 56:47. We don't know if it's true or not. We'll let you guys on the island for now. If it's all nonsense, then don't even think about leaving this place alive. Lan Gully pretended to be unyielding. Unfortunately, he was already feeling a little guilty in front of Lin Yi, so his words didn't sound imposing at all. Among these sea serpents, Lan Gully was probably the leader. Hence, when he spoke, the other sea serpents didn't say anything else. They could only let Lin Yi and the rest swagger onto the island. When Lenguza left, he purposely snorted at Lan Gully. Then, he raised his head high with a proud look on his face. Being able to see Lan Gully being slapped away twice made him very happy. In the center of Serpent Island, there was a huge sea dragon palace. The style was rather rough. Obviously, this wasn't something the sea serpents were good at. In Lin Yi's eyes, it was simply frighteningly simple. Within his divine sense, The palace under the island that Lenguza had mentioned was also partially detected by Linny. It still had the same style, but because of the beautiful underwater scenery as a natural decoration, it was very interesting. Serpents weren't the only ones on Serpent Island. There were also some other sea beasts as servants. Lin-E, Lenguza, and Snake Shichiro were brought to a huge palace without walls. They sat at a stone table that had been prepared beforehand. After the sea beast that led the way left, only Lin-E and the other two were left in the spacious palace. The sea breeze blew against them, and they looked at each other speechlessly. Other than being huge, this palace was actually more like a pavilion, right? After a short while, the Sea Serpent King finally came out. He didn't bring any other serpents with him. Lenguza looked at Lin-E awkwardly. Although the Sea Serpent King had personally come out, other than him and Snake Shichiro, there weren't any other guests. This banquet was a little shabby. Grandfather. Lenguza stood up and bowed respectfully. Sea Serpent King only nodded slightly and did not say anything else. Snake Shichiro followed. Snake Shichiro pays his respects to the Dragon King. Although he was only a Jiao dragon, being called a Dragon King made him happier. Therefore, the Jiao Dragon King smiled and said, "Snake Shichiro, you did a good job this time. Lenguza is lucky to have a friend like you. You flatter me, Dragon King." This is what Snake Shichiro is supposed to do. Snake Shichiro was flattered and said modestly. The Sea Serpent King said a few words of encouragement before turning to Lin-E. "You're Lin-E, right? I heard from Shi Qilang that you've contributed a lot this time. That's why I invite you to the Flood Dragon Island as a guest to thank you. The delicacies of the Endless Sea are not easy to be eaten by your human tribe. Please don't be too polite." Lin-E frowned slightly. This Jiao Dragon King's words were polite, but his tone was condescending. He was the king of the Endless Sea, so it was normal for him to be arrogant. But why did he look down on him with such a tone? "Thank you, Dragon King, for your invitation." Lin-E cupped his hands and thanked him, neither servile nor overbearing. Since the Serpent King had such an attitude, Lin-E had a pretty good idea of what was going on. The Sea Serpent King nodded and didn't say much to Lin-E. He turned to Snake Shichiro and said, "Snake Shichiro, you've contributed a lot this time. Your ancestors are also from our Jiao Dragon tribe, so I won't mistreat you. From now on, you will be the Prince Commander of the Endless Sea's Lotus Luo Sea. Do well, I have high hopes for you." Snake Shichiro was overjoyed and hurried to express his gratitude. "Snake Shichiro, thanks my king for your grace. From now on, I will go through fire and water for the prosperity of the royal family without hesitation." The so-called Prince Commander was basically a member of the Sea Beast royal family. Although the Lotus Luo Sea wasn't big, with this title, Snake Shichiro could be considered to have entered the core of the Endless Sea's upper echelons. If Snake Shichiro could transform into a sea serpent, he could use this title to advance further and truly integrate into the core circle of the Sea Serpent clan. Very good. With such a young and promising descendant like you, our Sea Beast clan won't have to worry about not having the opportunity to develop and prosper." The Sea Serpent King said gently. He then turned to Lin-E and said, "As for our human friend, do you have any rewards you want? Because you're not a member of our Sea Beast clan, the position in the Endless Sea doesn't mean anything to you." What he meant was that Lin-E could just ask for some benefits and go home. Don't expect to get the true recognition of the Sea Beast clan. Lin-E frowned again. This Sea Serpent King ignored him, but he's getting angry? Rewards? Who does he think he is? If it wasn't for Lenguza's face, who would care about this old Sea Serpent King's face? But thinking that he would only be staying for a short while, there was no need to fall out with the Sea Serpent King. Hence, Lin-E didn't want to bother about the Sea Serpent King's attitude. It was enough as long as he achieved his goal. "Sea Serpent King, I don't need your rewards. This time, I'm only here to reach an agreement with the Sea Serpent clan." Lin Yi said faintly. He only emphasized the word reward, implicitly expressing his power. As the savior of Lenguza, Lin Yi wasn't a servant of the Sea Serpent clan. He didn't need the Sea Serpent King's rewards. The Sea Serpent King narrowed his eyes. He could naturally hear some clues from Lin Yi's words. To be honest, the Sea Serpent King really looked down on Lin Yi. This invitation was just a formality to save face for the Sea Serpent clan. Grandpa, this human is too arrogant. He actually wants to discuss a deal with our Sea Serpent clan. What a joke! As soon as Lin Yi finished speaking, Lan Gully and the other Sea Serpent King entered the hall. With the Sea Serpent King present, Lan Gully regained his confidence. Hence, he immediately interrupted Lin Yi. The Sea Serpent King turned to look at Lan Gully and the other Sea Serpent King. Lan Gully, don't talk nonsense. This is Lenguza's benefactor. Hence, he has the right to ask for something. The other Sea Serpent King glanced at Lenguza and Lin Yi with disdain. He then bowed to the Sea Serpent King. Grandpa, grandsons have come to disturb you. It's all right. Lan Gully, since you're here, come and sit with us. It's also good to accompany our human guests. The Sea Serpent King said amiably. Lan Gully was a genius of the Sea Serpent clan. At a young age, he evolved from a sea serpent to a sea serpent dragon. Chapter 56-48. Lan Guao thanked him, then sat down with Lan Gully. He then looked at Lin Yi and said, Human, don't think that just because you saved Lenguza once, you can negotiate with the sea serpent race. Even if you overestimate yourself, there should be a limit. What status do you think you have to be on equal footing with the sea serpent race? Lenguza angrily said, Lan Guao, what status do you think you have? This is a conversation between Grandpa and Boss Lin Yi. What qualifications do you and Lan Gully have to interrupt? Enough. Shut up. The Sea Serpent King growled, cutting off Lenguza's words. He also stopped Lan Guao and Lan Gully from continuing. Human, tell me your request first. This king said that he would reward you. As long as it's not too excessive, this king can satisfy your request. Honestly speaking, Lin Yi had basically given up on hope. At most, he would just have to go hunt sea beasts. But since the Sea Serpent King had said so, whether or not it worked out, he still had to mention it. I hope to be able to exchange 3,000 sea beast cores with the sea serpent race every year. The ratio is 300 nascent soul, 900 golden core, and 1,800 foundation establishment. I wonder if Sea Serpent King is willing to agree? As for what he would give in exchange, Lin Yi didn't even mention it. If the Sea Serpent King had this intention, then he would naturally continue the negotiations. If he didn't, then everything else was useless. As expected, the Sea Serpent King didn't even ask about Lin Yi's conditions. He directly refused. Impossible. The cores of our sea beast race will never be given to a human, let alone 3,000 per year. Seeing that you've saved Lenguza, I'll give you 30 sea beast inner elixirs when you return later. The ratio will be as you've suggested. Lin Yi was enraged. 30 cores? Was he trying to send a beggar away? During the sea beast rampage and the battle on the island, Lin Yi had single-handedly killed 2,000 sea beasts. Why would he care about a mere 30 sea beast cores? What was worse was that when Lin Yi and Lenguza were chatting about this matter, Lenguza also told Lin Yi that hundreds of thousands of sea beasts died of natural causes in the Endless Sea every year. Several thousand inner dawn were just a drop in the ocean. For the sea beasts in the Endless Sea, where the strong were respected and the weak were prey to the strong, it didn't matter whether these inner dawn were given to humans or not. But now, the Sea Serpent King had rejected Lin Yi's proposal and wasn't even willing to listen to Lin Yi's conditions. This was simply too much. Sea Serpent King, I'm not asking for your nadins for free. The humans of the ancient Jianghu used spirit jades, or other items to trade. For both sides, this is a win-win situation. Why can't you accept it? Lin Yi suppressed his anger and said coldly to the Sea Serpent King, "There is no why." The Sea Serpent King said indifferently, "The sea beasts are all noble. Even if it's an inner core left behind after natural death, it's not something humans can easily touch. So, whatever you say is useless. There's no need to talk about this anymore." This argument was simply ridiculous. Did this old thing think that if they didn't trade, Lin Yi and the humans of the ancient Jianghu wouldn't be able to get the inner dawn? At most, they could just kill more sea beasts. The Sea Serpent King would rather the sea beasts of the endless sea be killed than exchange the inner dawn of the sea beasts that died of natural causes. In Lin Yi's eyes, he was simply a stupid king. Ah, is this the sincerity of the Sea Serpent King? All right, just pretend that I didn't say anything. Lin Yi sneered. It seemed that he couldn't communicate with this Sea Serpent King anymore. The Sea Serpent King also sneered, "Human, don't think that just because you're Lenguza's savior, you can threaten the Sea Serpent King." "Grandpa, why would Boss Lin want to threaten us? He just wants to exchange for a bit of inner dawn every year. There's nothing wrong with that." Lenguza very loyally argued for Lin Yi. Unfortunately, he completely didn't understand the Sea Serpent King's thoughts, so there was no result. The Sea Serpent King didn't even need to speak. Lan Guao and Lan Guli both angrily rebuked. "Lenguza, remember your identity. You actually have the nerve to call a human boss here? What a disgrace. Boss Lin, he saved my life. What's so shameful about me calling him boss? On the contrary, it's you two who are fanning the flames here that's even more shameful for the Sea Serpent King." Lenguza also threw caution to the wind and roared, not backing down even half a step. The Sea Serpent King unhappily shouted, "Enough! What are the three of you doing? Restrain yourselves a little." The Sea Serpent King was quite displeased that there was internal strife in front of a human like Lin Yi. He didn't like Lenguza to begin with, and now all his dissatisfaction was directed at Lenguza. However, he didn't seem to have any intention of blaming Lan Guao and Lan Guli at all. Lin Yi laughed coldly in his heart. Lenguza really wasn't talking nonsense. His position in the Sea Serpent King was indeed quite awkward. He was the third-in-line successor in name, but he didn't receive the slightest bit of attention. With the Sea Serpent King's favoritism, Lan Guli immediately said arrogantly, "Grandfather, Lenguza is really a disgrace to the Sea Serpent King. Perhaps something happened to Lenguza after he was captured by the humans. Grandfather, please allow me to investigate and see if Lenguza was sent back as a spy by the humans." Snake Shichiro's expression also turned ugly. This idiot's imagination was quite wild. He could come up with anything. If that was the case, didn't that mean that Snake Shichiro had also colluded with the humans? Unfortunately, even though Snake Shichiro was a prince commander of the Lian Luosi region, he didn't have the right to speak in this situation. He could only lower his head angrily and curse Lan Guli in his heart. "Lan Guli, that's enough. I didn't hold it against you when you bullied me all this time. However, if you insult me and Boss Lin Yi again, I definitely won't let this matter rest." Lenguza pointed at Lan Guli and roared. This made the Sea Serpent King even more displeased. "Oh my! You're saying that you didn't hold it against me when I bullied you all this time? You sure sound confident. Looks like I should thank you for showing mercy. How about this? You better show me what you're capable of and hold it against me. Show me if you don't let this matter rest." Lan Guli said with a mocking expression. He was very clear about Lenguza's strength. Chapter 56-49. Lenguza couldn't take it anymore and directly shot out from behind the table. His monstrous aura completely enveloped Lan Guli as he appeared in front of him in an instant. Lan Guli's expression immediately changed. At this time, Lenguza's profound ascending early-stage aura was completely exposed. How was this the early-stage nascent soul that he could easily bully? But it was too late to realize now. Although the early stage, profound ascending early stage, and the nascent soul great circle seemed to only be one level apart. The difference between this one level was like the distance between heaven and earth. When a sea serpent matured and evolved into a flood dragon, this was the greatest manifestation of this level. Langueo was right beside Longuli. After discovering Lenguza's strength, he was also greatly shocked. However, he was also a profound ascending early stage expert, so he wouldn't just watch as Longuli was attacked. Under Longuli's horrified gaze, Langueo teleported in front of him and forcefully blocked Lenguza's attack, forcing Lenguza to retreat. After all, Lenguza's strength had just been forcefully raised by the center. Although Lin Yi's treatment had caused him to mutate, that only increased his potential. His current strength and experience were far from Langueo's, so it was normal that he couldn't gain any advantage in one move. The Sea Serpent King originally allowed Longuli to teach Lenguza a lesson. He didn't expect that Lenguza would turn the tables and teach Longuli a lesson. For a moment, he looked at Lenguza in shock and didn't say anything. Langueo narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at Lenguza. He nodded slightly and said, "You're actually also at the profound ascending early stage. I really didn't expect this. Since you have the qualifications to challenge me, then I'll give you a chance today. As long as you can beat me, I'll speak up for you in front of Grandfather. How about it?" All along, Langueo had looked down on Lenguza. Not to mention the difference in strength, he was firmly above Lenguza in terms of succession, not to mention the difference in status in the Sea Serpent King's heart. To put it bluntly, an early nascent soul stage Lenguza didn't even have the qualifications to enter Langueo's line of sight. In other words, Longuli, who was ranked behind Lenguza and whose strength surpassed Lenguza, had always been thinking of ways to deal a blow to Lenguza. But now, when Lenguza displayed strength that wasn't inferior to Langueo's, and he hadn't even transformed into a sea serpent, Langueo couldn't help but take him seriously. He naturally wanted to find out the truth about Lenguza. The Sea Serpent King had a calm expression on his face. That short exchange just now couldn't even be considered a test. But with his eyesight, he was sure that Lenguza wasn't Langueo's opponent. Since Langueo had this intention, he would pretend not to hear it. Who asked Langueo to be his favorite grandson? Lenguza hesitated for a moment. Because Langueo had never treated him as an opponent and didn't bully him like Longuli, or rather, he didn't care to bully him. Therefore, Lenguza didn't particularly hate Langueo. Right now, he could only look at Lin Yi and see if Lin Yi had any suggestions. Lin Yi faintly smiled and lightly nodded at Lenguza, indicating for him to agree. Since the current Sea Serpent tribe didn't have a good impression of the human race, perhaps supporting Lenguza to take the lead wasn't a bad choice. If Langueo jumped out himself, it wouldn't be a bad idea to let Lenguza show off. When Lenguza saw that Lin Yi also agreed to let him go, he immediately threw away all his worries and said, "All right, then let me experience the power of our Sea Serpent tribe's genius. If I'm lucky enough to win by half a move, I hope you, Langueo, will keep your promise. Do you think I'll go back on my word for such a small matter?" Langueo looked at Lenguza with disdain and said, "Only a guy like you would take it seriously. Cut the crap and come." "All right." Lenguza roared and shot towards Langueo like a bolt of lightning. Although he knew that he might not be Langueo's opponent, Lenguza didn't show the slightest bit of fear. His indomitable aura was quite astonishing, and even Langueo couldn't help but put away his underestimation and face Lenguza's attack seriously. Both sides had the intention to fight it out, but Lin Yi didn't want to waste any time. He secretly used his divine sense to activate a martial skill, summoning a bolt of lightning that accurately struck Langueo's head. Langueo, who was caught off guard, was struck to the ground by the lightning and started to twitch uncontrollably. Although this strike wouldn't take his life, it was enough to temporarily immobilize him. Lenguza was also stunned by this situation, but he immediately understood that Lin Yi was secretly helping him. If it was someone with an inflexible personality, they might think that Lin Yi's actions were an insult to the spirit of a duel. But Lenguza felt that his boss was always right. It was only right and proper for him to help him. What was so strange about that? Taking advantage of the fact that Lan Guao was unable to move, Lan Guja bluntly sent him flying. This could be considered as his victory in this competition. Lan Guli was dumbfounded. What the CK was going on? Lan Guao was actually defeated in an instant. That lightning martial skill was so domineering. This fellow, Lenguza, had actually grasped such a powerful technique. Who would dare to bully him in the future? He wouldn't be the one being bullied instead, right? On the other hand, the Sea Serpent King, who was sitting at the head of the table, saw that Lan Guja was slightly stunned when the lightning appeared, and thus deduced that the lightning technique that Lan Guao used in the attack was not from Lan Guja. The most suspicious person was, of course, the expressionless Lin Yi. This human really wasn't simple. The Sea Flood Dragon King looked deeply at Lin Yi, thinking in his heart. Lin Yi was able to activate a martial skill right under his nose without him noticing anything. His strength could be considered unfathomable. For a person like this, offending him too much wasn't a wise thing to do. The endless sea was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. The strong were respected. This was an unchanging rule. So the Sea Flood Dragon King's thoughts changed quite naturally. Lan Guli, go see if Lan Guao is injured. Take him to get some rest. The Sea Flood Dragon King made up his mind and sent Lan Guli away. Coincidentally, Lan Guli was also feeling a little fearful when he saw Lenguza. Being able to leave was exactly what he wanted. Hence, he quickly agreed and hurriedly left the place. When Lenguza saw this, the resentment he felt from being bullied finally dissipated. He turned to the Sea Flood Dragon King and said, "Grandpa, Lan Guao promised me that he would speak up for me. Although he's not here anymore, you heard about this, right?" Chapter 5650. Okay, I'll send someone to contact Snake Shichiro. Lin Yi didn't thank Sea Serpent King. After all, Lenguza was the one who fought for this deal. It had nothing to do with Sea Serpent King. If that's the case, I'll send Snake Shichiro to escort you. No human has ever set foot on Serpent Island. You're the first, and hopefully the last. Sea Serpent King directly gave the order to send the guest off, and clearly expressed that he didn't want Lin Yi to come back. Although he didn't want to offend Lin Yi, Sea Serpent King obviously didn't want to be friends with Lin Yi. His contempt and hostility towards humans had already penetrated deep into Sea Serpent King's bones. Being able to treat Lin Yi like this was already very good. "Grandpa, I hope to go out with Boss to gain some experience. Anyway, I have nothing to do on Serpent Island. Maybe I can complete my transformation faster if I follow Boss." Lenguza saw that Sea Serpent King was about to send Lin Yi away, so he quickly made his request. The Sea Serpent King looked at Lenguza and hesitated for a moment. He had never paid much attention to this grandson of his. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was dispensable. If it wasn't for the sake of the Sea Serpent tribe's reputation, Lenguza's death wouldn't be a big deal. But now that Lenguza had reached the early stage of mysterious ascension, he was a rare and important combat power for the Sea Serpent clan. Especially since Lenguza hadn't evolved yet, Sea Serpent King actually had some expectations for him. Considering that Lenguza's current strength was completely because he went to a human territory, perhaps following Lin, he could really increase his strength. Plus, Sea Serpent King still didn't like Lenguza that much. So after thinking for a while, Sea Serpent King nodded and agreed to his request. "Thank you, Grandpa." After receiving an affirmative answer, Lenguza thanked him happily and then brought Lin Yi and Snake Shichiro to the beach under the island. Lin Yi's purpose of coming here had also been achieved. Although the process wasn't pleasant, at least he didn't come for nothing, so he was in a good mood. After leaving the hall, Lin Yi smiled at Lenguza and said, Lenguza, it's all thanks to you this time. Boss, what nonsense are you spouting? If not for you, how could I have taught Lan Gueo and Lan Guli a lesson so easily? To be honest, I didn't help much. In the end, it was all thanks to you, boss. Lenguza laughed. He was in a good mood. See, Serpent King's bad attitude towards Lin Yi was out of their control, so they tacitly did not mention it. Lin Yi also stopped talking about who contributed more. Instead, he talked to Snake Shichiro about the deal. In fact, when Lin Yi was here, there was no need for any deal at all. No one would say anything if they just took it. However, Lin Yi was about to leave the immemorial underworld. At that time, Snake Shichiro would definitely have no objections. But it was hard to guarantee that the other sea beasts wouldn't take the opportunity to make things difficult for Snake Shichiro. Therefore, it was better to trade for a long time. In the end, this matter still depended on Exynegia and the others. After Lin Yi finalized the contact information, he could leave. Lenguza! I will leave the immemorial underworld in a few days. There's no point in you following me. Why don't you go to the Lian Luo Sea with Snake Shichiro? After talking to Snake Shichiro, Lin Yi said to Lenguza. Lenguza said indifferently, Boss, I will follow you wherever you go. If you want to leave, then we can leave together. It's not a big problem. Lin Yi was speechless. Didn't this guy hear that he was leaving the immemorial underworld? Still following him? Lenguza! When I said I want to leave the immemorial underworld, I meant to leave this space and go to another world. Lin Yi could only explain it simply in case Lenguza really didn't understand. However, Lenguza said excitedly, Isn't it better to go to another world? I don't want to stay in the endless sea for a long time. Boss, you must bring me along. You can't go. Lin Yi wanted to bring him to the heavenly island, but Lin Yi himself was projected here with his primordial spirit. It was impossible for Lenguza to go there. Boss, if you can go, I can go too. Lenguza said firmly. He had made up his mind to rely on Lin Yi. Lin Yi felt a headache coming on. He couldn't explain it in a short amount of time, so he decided to let the guy tag along for now. He'd understand why Lin Yi could go, but he couldn't when he got back. Thinking of the heavenly island, Lin Yi suddenly thought of the relationship between the various sects in the immemorial underworld and the various forces on the heavenly island. Thus, he changed the topic and said, Lenguza, let me ask you something. Your sea dragon clan should be able to survive for a much longer time than the human clan. Do you know if there were any major changes in this world a long time ago? Lenguza said with a dumbfounded expression, Boss, I'm so young. How would I know about things that happened a long time ago? Lin Yi was stunned. Was there a definite relationship between being young and knowing about things that happened a long time ago? Even a primary school student in the secular world knew about 5,000 years of history. Forget it. This guy looked like he wasn't cultured. It was better to ask Snake Shichiro. Lin Yi did as he thought. Ignoring Lenguza, he turned and asked, Has Snake Shichiro heard of such things? There should be similar legends or records in the endless sea, right? Snake Shichiro laughed dryly and said that, actually, our sea beast clan has never had the habit of recording things. As for legends, everyone basically just saw their prey go up and eat their fill. There's nothing to talk about, right? Lin Yi felt that it was a waste of time to ask them this kind of question. It was better to ask each sect to check if there were any records about this after they returned to the Jadian sect. When it came to cultural inheritance, humans were indeed many times more powerful than the sea beasts. There was no comparison between them at all. After leaving the Sea Dragon Island, Lenguza still carried Lin Yi on his back. Snake Shichiro, on the other hand, brought his subordinates to the Lian Luo Sea to take up his post. After they separated, Lenguza's speed suddenly became much faster. The time needed to return to the Jadian sect was also greatly shortened. During the 2 days that Lin Yi was away, Exynegia and the disciples who participated in the immemorial grand meeting returned with great rewards. After receiving the news of Lin Yi's return, a large group of people rushed out to welcome him. Chapter 56-51. Exanegia shook his head blankly and said, "I've never heard of it. Do you have any impression of it, Vice Head Hong?" Lin Yi also turned to look at Hong Zijuan. After all, he was the former head of Qing Yun's sect, while Exanegia was just an ordinary gold, core stage elder and the one at the bottom. There was no comparison between the two. Hong Zijuan frowned and thought for a while, then said uncertainly, "If Grand Uncle wants to ask, I seem to have heard of this legend, but it's just a legend. There's no clear record." Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He didn't have much hope, but he didn't expect Hong Zijuan to really have heard of it. His interest was immediately aroused, and he signaled Hong Zijuan to continue. Hong Zijuan didn't dare to neglect. Lin Yi was not only the pillar of Qing Yun sect, but also the leader of the entire ancient, small Jianghu. Anything that could interest Lin Yi, whether it was a legend or not, he had to tell Lin Yi in detail. Martial ancestral uncle. Disciple heard that around 10,000 years ago, an enormous calamity had indeed occurred in the primeval world. The specific situation is already impossible to verify now, and the only thing we know is that all the sects and clans at that time were practically annihilated, and the people that survived were less than 1 in 100. Moreover, they were all disciples at the lowest level of the clans. Hong Zijuan spoke, very slowly. After all, it wasn't something important. He didn't even remember it completely, so he needed to sort out his memories while speaking. Lin Yi wasn't in a hurry. He listened and thought at the same time. He felt that this statement was very likely to be the truth. At that time in the ancient small Jianghu, there were powerful people at the profound ascension stage, or even higher. But in that catastrophe, all the cultivators above the nascent soul stage disappeared. In the entire ancient small Jianghu, there hasn't been a single profound ascension stage cultivator since. Lin Yi frowned slightly. He suddenly thought of the god controlling bracelet on his hand. According to Zhao Dan, he and Yin Qinqing found it in a cave house thousands of years ago. At that time, there was also a profound ascension stage, see Beast's Inner Core. It seemed that the cave house was left tens of thousands of years ago. He wondered if there were any clues left behind there. Lin Yi was a little hesitant. Should he let Zhao Dan bring him to the cave to have a look? But he'd thought about Sky Class Island and Ziyu's request. If this wasn't too important, then he'd go the next time he came back. He'd decide before he left. If that's the case, then the inheritance of the ancient small Jianghu should have been broken at that time, right? Lin Yi asked casually as he was thinking about something. Hong Zijuan nodded and said, "It should be, because it was said that all the sects were destroyed at that time, and all the masters were missing. Although the surviving disciples rebuilt their sects, the cultivation methods and martial skills they obtained were incomplete. Perhaps this is the reason why there were no profound ascending stage cultivators from that time onwards." Lin Yi nodded slightly, but he believed that the lack of inheritance was only one of the reasons why there was no profound ascension stage. Another reason was that from that time onwards, the small Jianghu had lost the method and way to advance to the profound ascension stage with the help of the Thunder Tribulation. However, this method still existed on the Heavenly Island. Perhaps it existed on the ancient small Jianghu as well, but these people didn't notice it. It was evidently Exanegia's first time hearing about this legend, and he was listening with great interest. He suddenly asked, "So you're saying that Grandmaster is a powerful person from 10,000 years ago?" Exanegia had long believed that this Grandmaster Lin Yi wasn't from the ancient small Jianghu, but after hearing this legend, he wasn't so sure anymore. I'm not that old." Lin Yi was about to leave the ancient small Jianghu, and he didn't need to hide his background anymore. He smiled and said, "I come from another plane, and the sects there are similar to the ancient small Jianghu. Their arts are the same as well, so there should be a connection. I come from the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, so I'm indeed your Grand Master." Xianijia and Hong Zijuan looked at each other, both surprised and happy. They had accepted the possibility that Lin Yi was a primordial spirit from 10,000 years ago, but now they heard that Lin Yi came from another plane. Both of them thought of the legendary powerful people who disappeared almost at the same time. Could it be that they were from another plane, and because they had the complete mantra and martial art skills, they reestablished their own sects and forces? Thinking of this possibility, both of them were instantly excited. If they could go to that plane, wouldn't they be able to meet many seniors from their sects? From Lin Yi's strength, it could be inferred that the development over there was definitely much more powerful than the ancient small Jianghu. After a brief mention, Lin Yi didn't want to say more. If he could open up the passage between the Heaven Stage Island and the ancient small Jianghu, then it would be meaningful to tell Xianijia and the others in detail. It was useless to say more now, and it was necessary for them to develop the ancient small Jianghu. Although Xianijia and Hong Zijuan were very curious about where Lin Yi came from, they didn't dare to ask since Lin Yi didn't want to say more. They could only suppress their thoughts and discuss with Lin Yi about the details of the transaction of the spiritual jade immortal vein and the inner elixir of the sea beasts. After talking about the transaction of the spiritual jade immortal vein and the inner elixir of the sea beasts, Lin Yi suddenly thought of something and asked, "Have you heard of the Azure Valley? There's a plant called the amethyst lotus there. It's said to be the best material to rebuild one's physical body." Lin Yi had always appeared in front of people with his primordial spirit. Therefore, Xianijia and Hong Zijuan didn't doubt him at all when he asked about the amethyst lotus. They naturally thought that Lin Yi wanted to rebuild his physical body for himself. With his current strength, he would be even more powerful if he had a physical body. Xianijia said first, "I've heard of the amethyst lotus, but I don't know where it is exactly. It's only now that Grand Uncle Master mentioned the Azure Valley that I know it's here. May I know the exact location of the Azure Valley? We, the Blue Cloud sect, will definitely try our best to find the amethyst lotus for Grand Uncle Master." Lin Yi thought to himself, "Why would I ask you if I know the exact location?" Moreover, the amethyst lotus was not for Lin Yi's own use. Xianijia obviously misunderstood, but he didn't intend to explain. Chapter 56-52. "Oh, Zijuan, where did you hear about Blue Sky Valley? Tell me more." Lin Yi looked at Hong Zijuan with interest. He didn't expect Hong Zijuan to know so much. He was a talent in this aspect. Hong Zijuan was happy to see Lin Yi's interest. There were not many opportunities to show his presence in front of Lin Yi, so he treasured it very much. Replying to Grand Master's words, Disciple also heard about the Blue Sky Valley at an ancient grand meeting more than 10 years ago. At that time, Disciple had just become the head of Jadian's sect not long ago, and coincidentally heard them mention it at a gathering of the 10 minor sect heads. Hong Zijuan wanted to say that he knew about Blue Sky Valley, but unfortunately his information was very limited, so he could only provide such a clue. Lin Yi nodded and said, "I see. In that case, there should be records about Blue Sky Valley among the 10 minor leaders. Zijuan, do you remember which clan's leader said that?" Hong Zijuan said regretfully, "I can't remember clearly because I wasn't familiar with the leaders of the 10 small sects at that time, and the topic of Blue Sky Valley was just a passing thought, so I can only remember this much. I guess they don't know the specific location of Blue Sky Valley, or else there would be news of it after so many years." Lin Yi thought for a moment and said, "All right, let's not talk about this for now. Ijia, send a notice to the 4 big and 10 minor leaders, and ask them to send a senior to Jadian's sect. I still need to give them an explanation for my leaving, so that there won't be any unnecessary trouble. Also, I need to explain to them about the spiritual jade immortal vein and the sea beast inner Dan." "Yes, Grand Master. I'll arrange it now." Xianijia replied respectfully. Although the archaic event had just ended, and the 4 big and 10 minor leaders had just dispersed, they knew that it was Lin Yi's arrangement, so they probably wouldn't have any objections. Lin Yi wanted to ask if anyone knew the location of the Blue Sky Valley. For Lin Yi, The ghost was both a teacher and a friend. If he could find the purple mist-black lotus, it would be a very good thing for both Lin Yi and the ghost. Han Zijuan saw that Lin Yi did not seem to have anything else to ask him, so he left with Xianijia. Xianijia went to inform the Big Four and the 10 kids, while Han Zijuan went to arrange the reception for the Big Four and the 10 kids. This time, as long as they could successfully summon the 4 big ones and 10 young ones to Jadian's sect, then Jadian's sect's position as the leader of the ancient small Jianghu would be unshakable. Previously, it was only a de facto leader, but after this matter, there would no longer be any problem in name. On the second day after Xianijia sent out the notice, Ma Zedin and Chen Biden from 5 Elements sect were the first to arrive at Jadian's sect. After they left Jadian's sect, they were still studying the true Qi alchemic fire along the way, so they didn't fly too far. After receiving the notice, they came back immediately, even earlier than Rising Heaven sect and Xuanji sect. Uncle Master, do you have any instructions for this disciple recruitment? Ma Zedin brought Qin Biden to greet Lin Yi as soon as they could, bowing respectfully. Lin Yi waved his hand. It's nothing special. Didn't I say that I'll be leaving the ancient Jianghu for a while? That's why I gathered everyone here to announce it in front of everyone. I don't want people to think that I'm gone. Ma Zedin immediately said passionately, "Don't worry, Grandmaster. If anyone wants to make trouble at Jadian's sect while Grandmaster is away, our 5 Elements sect will be the first to deal with them. If they want to deal with Jadian's sect, they have to destroy our 5 Elements sect first." That's right, our 5 Elements sect has received great kindness from Grandmaster. No matter who it is, don't even think about touching a finger of Jadian's sect. Qin Biden also echoed loudly. Judging from their expressions, it didn't seem like they were just being perfunctory. Speaking of kindness, the mental cultivation method and alchemy experience that Lin Yi taught them were indeed priceless treasures for the 5 Elements sect. It was normal for Ma, Zedin, and Chen Biden to be grateful. But more importantly, Lin Yi wasn't in Jadian's sect. But there was still Yu Yi, a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse. Looking at his performance in the ancient grand meeting, he wasn't as easy to talk to as Lin Yi. Ma Zedin and Qin Biden weren't fools. Of course they knew how to choose. In addition to Jadian's sect's own strength, there were also powerful allies like Immemorial Invincible and Shangguan clan. Ma Zedin didn't think that anyone would take things too hard and casually come to provoke Jadian's sect. Taking the opportunity to express their loyalty, there was absolutely no risk. Lin Yi nodded with a smile and said, "Since you can think like this, my expectations for you guys have not been in vain. All right, there's something I want to ask you guys. Marshal Uncle, please ask. Disciple will definitely tell you everything I know." Ma Zedin said without hesitation. Anyway, there were no secrets in 5 Elements sect that couldn't be revealed. Those core secrets were just the mental cultivation method of alchemy. Lin Yi didn't care about it all. It's like this. Have you heard of purple mist lotus? Although it's used to reconstruct the body, it can also be regarded as a kind of elixir. Perhaps your 5 Elements sect has records about it? Han Zijuan said that he heard the news at the gathering of the 10 minor sect masters. But as one of the Big Four, Lin Yi felt that Ma Zedin might have more detailed information. If it's purple mist lotus, is it the blue sky valley near the river of divine knowledge? Sure enough, Ma Zedin just thought for a little bit and accurately said a few key words. Yes, it's the blue sky valley. Do you know the specific location of the blue sky valley? Lin Yi's eyes lit up and immediately asked, "I'm sorry, Marshal Uncle. Disciple really doesn't know." Ma Zedin said with a face full of regret. This was a rare opportunity to please Lin Yi. He really felt that it was a pity, so after thinking about it, he continued, "Legend has it that the Blue Sky Valley is near the river of divine knowledge, but people who have gone to look for the Blue Sky Valley have never found any clues. So Disciple thinks that there should be some kind of restriction in the Blue Sky Valley, the kind that people who don't know will never find." "This is very likely. Lin Yi was a little disappointed in his heart and nodded casually. Forget it. If there's a chance, I'll look for it again. Ma Zedong said with hesitation, Martial uncle. Disciple doesn't know whether I should say it or not. About the Blue Sky Valley? Lin Yi looked at Ma Zedong strangely and said indifferently, If you have something to say, just say it. I won't blame you. Chapter 56-53. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, I know what you're talking about. It's just some poisonous gas. What's the big deal? 20? It'll be fine. No, Martial uncle, you're wrong. Ma Zedong raised her head and said seriously, The poisonous gas is indeed fatal to cultivators, but for the primordial spirit it's like purgatory. If ordinary people breathe in the poisonous gas, there may be some buffer time. But if the primordial spirit and primordial spirit are slightly contaminated, they may immediately disappear. There's such a thing. Lin Yi was also stunned when he heard this. He really hadn't heard of this. Did Zhou Ying and the water lotus deliberately hide it? After thinking for a while, Lin Yi guessed with uncertainty. Is this characteristic because of the existence of the amethyst lotus? Ma Zedong shook her head and said, Disciple doesn't know. These are all legends, but the possibility of what Martial uncle said is very high. This is because the amethyst nefarious lotus is the best material to reconstruct the body. Those who need the amethyst nefarious lotus are naturally powerful primordial spirits. So it's not strange for it to have special properties that specifically target primordial spirits. Chun Biden also interjected and advised, if Martial uncle wants to rebuild the body, you really don't need to go to the Blue Sky Valley and take the risk. Although the amethyst lotus is the best material, there are other things that can be replaced. Even if the effect is not as good as the amethyst lotus, at least the risk is not as high. Thank you for your concern. I will consider this matter. Lin Yi smiled faintly and thanked the two. If he was the one who wanted to rebuild his body, he wouldn't have put so much effort into it. But since he was preparing it for the ghost, he had to prepare the best when he had the chance. Is the matter about the Blue Sky Valley and the amethyst lotus recorded in your sect? Lin Yi asked casually. If there were records in the ancient books, he might be able to find more clues. It was a pity that Ma Zedong also said that it was a rumor that happened many years ago. She even forgot where she heard it from. Lin Yi was helpless. He could only let the two of them have the opportunity to inquire more about this and find a substitute for the purple, mist black lotus. If it didn't work, at least they could have a backup plan. In the evening, people from Soaring Sky Sect and Xuanji Sect arrived. This time, Xuanji Sect did not make it into the top 10 youngsters. However, due to their relationship with Blue Cloud Sect, they were still informed. As for the two sects from the North Island Alliance, Lin Yi had nothing to say. Since Blue Cloud Sect had made it to the North Island Alliance, based on Xionege's temper, he would definitely drag these two brother sects along with him. At night, the people from the Snow Sword Sect had also arrived. They were Bing Wuqing and Lung Lung. The two of them had originally come to the Blue Cloud Sect to look for Lin Yi, so after settling the matters of the Snow Sword Sect, they immediately came over. The moment Bing Wuqing saw Lin Yi, she uncharacteristically asked, Boss, I heard that you're leaving the primordial underworld? Let me go with you. Lin Yi was startled. You want to leave with me? What about the Snow Sword faction? The Snow Sword faction is counting on you now. Although the top 4 youngsters and top 10 youngsters had basically been integrated by Lin Yi, it was hard to say if there would be any changes after he left the primordial underworld. The Thousand Blades faction was so powerful in the past. It was precisely because of the disappearance of the primordial, undefeatable underworld that they declined to the point where they could not even make it into the top 10 youngsters. It's all right. I'll make the arrangements, Bing Wuqing said rather firmly. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. All right. Although I'd like to take you with me, it's a pity that you can't go to the place I'm going this time. Lung Lung looked like she wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Finally, she could not help but ask, Where are you going? Lin Yi turned around and saw the anticipation in Lung Leng's eyes. Although this girl did not say it, it was obvious that she wanted to go with Lin Yi. This time, I'm going back to where I came from. I can't take you there now. When I find a way next time, I'll come and take you there. Lin Yi did not need to hide anything from Bing Wuqing and Lung Lung. So he simply told them about the existence of Heaven Tier Island, like Xian Yijie and the others, although they were shocked and curious about the situation on Heaven Tier Island. Bing Wuqing was not a talkative person, so she did not ask much in the end. However, Lung Ling knew about the existence of Heaven Tier Island because Lin Yi had told her a story before. She thought it was just a story, but later she found out that it was Lin Yi's true identity. After the three of them talked for a while, Bing Wuqing and Lung Lung were dragged away by Ling Shan, Wu Qintian, and the others. These were considered old friends, and there was no estrangement between them. On the other hand, Lin Yi continued to receive people from other sections. This night, a few people from the 10 small sects came, including the Calamity Master of Qin Kuan's sect. Calamity Master should have hated Lin Yi to the core. But in the face of Lin Yi's strength, Calamity Master wisely chose to compromise. So he was very respectful this time. Lin Yi was not a ruthless person. Since Calamity Master had given in, he no longer had the intention to go against Qin Kuan's sect. At noon the next day, it was the time that Xian Yijie had set for the 4 big and 10 small sections. At the last moment, everyone had arrived, including Lin Yi's hardcore supporters, the Shangguan clan, the Thousand Blades sect, the Chu family, the Yiling sect, etc. Lin Yi did not have the chance to talk to them one by one, so he greeted them first and found another time to talk to them later. The banquet prepared by Hong Zijuan started on time. All kinds of exotic delicacies were served up like flowing water, but no one paid attention to the food. The immemorial grand meeting had just ended, and Jadian's sect had once again gathered the higher-ups of the 4 big and 10 small sections. There must be something important to announce, and it would be related to all the sections. This matter was, of course, much more important than the food. Lin Yi stood up from his seat of honor and said, "Today, I have invited all the sect masters, family heads, and elders here because I have a few things to announce. There are some details that I need everyone to discuss together. Thank you all for your hard work." "Master Lin, you're too kind. What's so hard about these small things?" "You're too kind, Grand Master. Just let us know if there's anything you need." "Elder Lin, please speak your mind." "We're all ears." All of a sudden, all the sect's higher-ups expressed their agreement. It was only after Lin Yi raised his hand and gestured for them to quiet down. Chapter 56-54. This was also very important for the trade of sea beast cores later, so Lin Yi emphasized this point. Other than the matter of the Lingyu Immortal Meridian, the second thing is about the sea beast cores. 2 days ago, I went to the land of the Sea Beast King and saw the king of the sea beasts, the patriarch of the Sea Dragon clan, the Sea Dragon King. This is a sea dragon at the peak of the late stage of the mysterious Ascension realm. His real combat power is probably many times stronger than ordinary mysterious Ascension realm cultivators. He should be infinitely close to the early stage of the mountain opening realm. Hearing Lin Yi's words, everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. Originally, the mysterious Ascension realm was already a legendary level, but this Sea Dragon King was already equivalent to the early stage of the mountain opening realm. Wasn't he almost at the level of a legend? Lin Yi waved his hand and said indifferently, "There's nothing strange about the Sea Dragon King's strength. I'm saying this to let you know what kind of existence there is in the deep sea of the sea beasts. If you hunt sea beasts in the future, don't go too deep, and it's forbidden to attack the royal family of the sea beasts. Because other than me, all the humans in the ancient, small Jianghu can't bear the anger of the royal family of the sea beasts." In fact, Lin Yi's words also indirectly hinted at what he was going to say next. In the future, Lin Yi would not be able to participate in the sea beast hunt, so this warning was still necessary. After everyone had digested this information, Lin Yi then said, After seeing the Sea Dragon King, I reached an agreement with the royal family of the sea beasts. Every year, we will use human resources to exchange for a batch of sea beast cores. The number is 3,000, but this batch of cores will not be used to supply the quota for the Lingyu Immortal Meridian, but will only be given to the 5 Elements sect to refine pills. If there's a need for pills, find the Blue Cloud sect to provide resources in exchange for the ratio of the cores. As for the specific details, you can ask Xian Iji yourself later. Compared to the strength of the Sea Dragon King, the exchange of the cores was simply nothing. But after everyone realized this, they also knew that this was an extremely important opportunity, not inferior to the quota for the Lingyu Immortal Meridian. With the alchemy ability of the 5 Element sect, it would be difficult for them to consume all 3,000 inner cores of sea beasts within a year. It was impossible for them to have extra energy to accept alchemy commissions for other scattered inner cores of sea beasts. In other words, although there would be a large number of pills in the ancient small Jianghu in the future, they would basically be in the hands of the sects that participated in the exchange. In order to get the pills, other than participating, they would have to pay 10 times or even tens of times the price afterwards. Lin Yi hadn't thought about this before, but in fact, after exchanging the pellets, this was the natural development. Since the Azure Cloud sect had control of this exchange channel, the 5 Elements sect was completely tied to the Azure Cloud sect's chariot, which meant that they had a monopoly on the entire ancient Jianghu's elixir supply. If any sect didn't want to join in, the final development would only be widened by the sect in front of them, and eventually they would be ruthlessly eliminated. After understanding this layer of cause and effect, everyone had made up their minds to get a certain share of this batch of cores no matter what. Fortunately, Lin Yi originally planned to develop the ancient small Jianghu, so Xian would not deny them this opportunity. The last thing is my personal matter. I didn't intend to say it, but I should inform everyone here. Lin Yi gathered these people to announce his departure. Of course, he would not end it so easily. The higher-ups of the 4 big and 10 small sects put aside their calculations and listened to Lin Yi carefully. Today, Lin Yi was fully deserving of the number 1 person in the ancient small Jianghu. Every move he made would affect the development of the entire ancient small Jianghu. For example, the exchange of the pills just now. Therefore, Lin Yi's so-called personal matter for them must not be treated as a personal matter and ignored. Now that the ancient small Jianghu has been reshuffled, the power structure has taken shape and gradually stabilized. Moreover, we have reached an agreement with the sea beasts. As long as we don't go too far in killing, we won't offend the sea beasts. Therefore, there won't be any impact if I leave at this time. The personal matter I mentioned is to take this opportunity to say goodbye to everyone. Marshal Uncle, where are you going? Shangguan Qingyin was the first to stand up and asked in surprise. Shangguan Qingyin came late, so he had not had the time to talk to Lin Yi privately. Otherwise, Lin Yi would have told him the truth instead of standing up and asking questions. Lin Yi smiled faintly and casually said, I'm going to investigate the center. Although the center's base at K. Luo Mountain was destroyed, the core people were not caught. If they are not eliminated, there will always be a problem in the future. The clue I got is that they have temporarily left the ancient small Jianghu, so I'm going with them. So that's how it is. Marshal Uncle is really benevolent and righteous. I, Shangguan Qingyin, am willing to follow Marshal Uncle to eliminate the remaining forces of the center. Shangguan Qingyin praised and immediately proposed to act with Lin Yi. Shangguan Feixing was by Shangguan Qingyin's side. Of course, he knew the reason why his father suddenly became a mysterious ascension stage. If he had the chance to follow Lin Yi, he would definitely not lose out. Master Lin is really chivalrous, working hard for the peace of the ancient small Jianghu. I am also willing to follow Master Lin and eliminate the remaining forces of the center. Elder Lin's righteous act is really touching. We are all willing to follow Elder Lin and contribute our own strength. Lin Yi suddenly sweated. He did not expect that the random excuse he found would make them so excited. It seemed that having too much prestige was not always a good thing. Thank you for your support, but this matter does not require too many people, because the center is best at hiding their tracks, so having more people may not be a good thing. On the contrary, if I am alone, I will have the greatest freedom and mobility, and it will be easier for me to find traces of the center. What do you all think? Lin Yi glared at Shangguan Qinyan and gestured for him to sit down and not cause trouble. Then he appeased the people who wanted to follow him. In fact, these people might not really want to follow Lin Yi to kill the people of the center. After all, they were all the big shots of their respective sections. Chasing after people was too time-consuming. If it was not for the fact that they wanted to respond to Lin Yi, they would not have joined in the fun.